Texas brings pressure. Duggan backpedals, lofts to the end zone. Wide open. Johnson, touchdown. A confused Texas secondary left the elite receiver wide open. 31-yard strike.
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Hornsby, Perkins, ball is out. Perkins stripped it, and now it's a fight for it. And it's still going down, and LSU recovers.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Delora fires end zone. Touchdown. Tetaroa McMillan.
Sikkim 365 Radio is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Elijah Green to the right of May. They fake the handoff. May, naked boots. He's dangerous. Look out, touchdown. Drake May.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Back to the air. Now Plumlee runs. Gaping hole. He's got the 30. It's a foot race. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Monday. Kind of a drizzly, rainy, wet, somewhat miserable Monday. Probably like a lot of Baylor fans feel after Saturday night, getting drummed and almost humiliated by Kansas State in many ways, and a dominant win for Chris Kleiman and his team. We will get into that, some of the evidence of college football from TCU, K-State, Oklahoma State, Tech, and West Virginia winning. And then all the others, of course, in the conference did not. Even the top 25, TCU flexed their muscles. Some other teams that have kind of gotten themselves in position to get higher and higher. And then some schools like Oregon, UCLA, and others fell backwards after the weekend. College football nuggets on injuries and much more. We'll also have guest lineup today at 3:45. Mike Casazza, he covers West Virginia for 247 on their AD. Shane Lyons being fired. Dave Aranda, Jamie Pollard of Iowa State. Also Ricky Thompson from Baylor, Sideline Radio. And then we'll talk NFL Cowboys with David Hellman, Paul's Top 5. We have so much to get to. I will pitch it out there. You guys yap and discuss and chew and digest. The chat room's going. Thanks to have everybody there. Let's start with, though, the tragedy. The University of Virginia. Listen, this is not good news at all. The University of Virginia had 5 players, 3 killed, 2 others seriously injured in a shooting on campus involving a former player after an off-campus, trip. And the player who was off, they couldn't find him for a little bit. He's now in custody. The ex-player is now in custody. And what a horrible tragedy in Charlottesville, Virginia, and also with the University of Virginia football program.
Yeah, that city, was probably still recovering from the last tragedy they had during the statue situation, and now has this other one at the university that's really terrible. And I think, it just brought back memories of me of the situation that happened here in Waco with Patrick Dennehy, where, and Carlton Dotson, who murdered him, and that is what led to the Baylor basketball scandal under Dave Bliss. And it's just so tragic what happened, and certainly don't know the motive for what the former football player, the walk-on who committed the crime, had for doing it, but it's tragic, and I just can't imagine what it's like to be on that campus, and especially on that football team this week when you're supposed to be preparing for a game against Coastal Carolina, and Tony Elliott in his first year has now got to turn around and deal with unspeakable tragedy.
I don't know what much to say. It's a lot to try and digest and think about. Just like Paul said, an absolute tragedy, and heart goes out to everybody in that community and everybody involved, and now some folks who have lost loved ones unspeakably and without any sort of warning, and I can't imagine the complete shock that people are feeling and reeling from at the moment. And I know this will be used far beyond just a story of sadness. This will, now become political, and I'm sure in some ways, and, will be talked about in disparaging ways in other ways. But just at its core, it's a huge, sad, awful, evil story in so many ways. And I don't know, the backstory. I don't think anybody really does right now. If there even is a backstory, you never know with these situations. But yeah, I just feel awful. I can't even wrap my head around what that must be like. And it is one of those things where, I thought of Uvalde. So I think we've all got our own thing. We probably got like 10 things we can all think of that seem similar to this. And that's what's the scary and saddest part of all, other than this immediate, tragedy right here. But yeah, this is America in so many ways. Feels like this is something that happens just quite a bit now. And, now it's just hitting home on this show closer because it involves some athletes. But this is, common occurrence now, and it's pathetic and it's sad, and, I don't know what else to say about it.
The investigation, the vice president at University of Virginia, President Jim Ryan, said that the shooting took place on a charter bus after students returned to campus from a field trip, an off-campus field trip. He called it obviously sad, shocking, tragic day for University of Community. Christopher Darnell Jones Jr., a former player, was taken into custody overnight. In fact, I think even earlier, about 3 o'clock this morning, there were texts as far as alerts from the university. So there's that story. And again, our thoughts and prayers to any place, no matter athletic or not, but a horrible story out of Charlottesville, Virginia. 3 players killed, 2 others are wounded. And it's just a horrible situation in Charlottesville, Virginia. Then what appeared to be perhaps one of the top stories today, and it still is because we have a large contingent of West Virginia fans. They had a great win in a torrential, nasty downpour in Morgantown. Garrett Green was critical. Neil Brown got the win. West Virginia beat Oklahoma. And then the story has mainly been about Neil Brown. But now it still could be, but Shane Lyons, their athletic director, is out. And I was given a couple of heads up from those who cover West Virginia, and I'm not sure if this is yet true, but we'll have one of them. We'll come up at 3:45 today. That look at names like Rob Mullins, West Virginia graduate, assistant AD at Oregon, Kevin Miller, senior associate AD at Georgia. Just names. That doesn't mean they're targeted, but names that might have connections to the Mountaineers. Now, Shane Lyons is out. The athletic department is struggling. Football, of course, has been struggling. They're 4-6, 2 games to go. And now what does this mean for Neil Brown?
Well, normally, generally speaking, when an AD gets fired, any of those coaches who were struggling, their timeline gets a little bit shorter, naturally. And part of that reason is that the new AD wants his guy in there and doesn't want to come in and be like, no, everything's fine. The other guy was just doing it all wrong. You want to have some agency in how things are going. And a lot of times the athletic director gets fired because they want to hire a new football coach. I'll just give you an example. Auburn. That had nothing to do with any sport other than football, really, what happened at Auburn. So we'll see what happens with West Virginia. This is good news ultimately for Neil Brown. Maybe they hire somebody who has a connection with Neil Brown and likes him, but most of the time it means that whether it be the year of the new hiring or the year after, there's going to be a new coach.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by this. I didn't really pick up on any scuttlebutt that the AD could be in trouble, and I've seen, Lyons' name and seen him mentioned or talking, over the years on quite a few occasions, and I think everybody's brain immediately goes the same direction, and that's what happens to the football coach, what happens to Neil Brown. I know Gordon Gee gave the dreaded vote of confidence, basically saying we'll let this season play out, and we still believe in Coach Brown and that whole deal, which I don't know. My brain immediately went to, yep, there it is. There's the dreaded vote, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if as the new AD's hired, they start looking around at what they could possibly do at football coach. I don't know what the financial situation is there. West Virginia fans can enlighten us on that, but I know that initially it felt as though there was a sticking point potentially with the buyout. Maybe that's not the case. I don't know. I mean, they just beat Oklahoma, so it's kind of weird timing that, it happens right after a win. So that also then leads me to wonder how much does that maybe have to do with, Neil Brown coming off of a win over Oklahoma. But there's also this feeling that's just kind of hung around whether they beat Baylor or whether they beat OU, that it doesn't really matter because they're not ultimately ending up where they would like to end up. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I think we all see the writing on the wall for Neil Brown, if not in the immediate future, in the not too distant future, unless miraculous things occur in his program.
I was, I've been on the phone and texting. Guys like Jed Drenning and others will again have the guest at 3:45. Joey Foster and I, Chris Lambert, and a lot of them were discussing that. In fact, somebody I spoke with who's in athletic administration that used to be a part of a search firm was mentioning that, in fact, that what he thinks might happen is that you get somebody in pretty quickly, so at least there's a chance to react sooner than later, although probably not able to react with any kind of decision even before National Signing Day, because that's less than, about a month away. But Shane Lyons is out. And so that means that West Virginia's looking for a new AD. And on top of that, again, a really nice win. Terrible loss for Oklahoma, just like it was for Baylor and Morgantown. But West Virginia 4-6 with 2 games left to play. So there's a couple of the bigger stories, without question. The Virginia tragedy, and West Virginia has fired their AD. Now, how about them Frogs? TCU goes into Austin. And how about K-State? They come into Waco. TCU pretty much dictated it. Texas's defense played as well as they possibly could. TCU wins again on the road in a tough environment. And Kansas State came in here and took football soul away from Baylor, at least for one weekend.
TCU proved, I think, to a lot of people that they can win games under a lot of different circumstances, which was, the narrative about their game control. But they're still fourth anyway. But I think that was a nice little chip in their corner to go down to Texas and play a game that the offenses for either team weren't exactly, rewriting the stat book, especially for Texas. Their touchdown came on defense. And Kansas State came in here and laid waste to Baylor. Absolutely laid waste to them. They drove a silver and purple truck over and over and over the Bears again and again and again. And this was every single problem Baylor's had during the year kind of all combining at once, or the overall theme of nothing works at the same time and nothing worked at all, really, on Saturday night.
Yeah, TCU looked terrific in that win. I mean, not that it was, some blowout, perfect victory, but just being able to overcome another situation where they were on the ropes a little bit in a low-scoring game, which is not what most people expected going into this one. If anything, I think most would have predicted a shootout of some sort with these two teams, but they showed up on defense in a major way. They've, probably not got enough credit for that side of the ball because the offense has been good, but when the offense wasn't able to move as well because of UT's defense playing pretty well, it was the Frogs defense that answered in kind and put on a show of their own and really made life hell for Quinn Ewers and company. Shut down Bijan, not the game at all, like I said, that I think anybody expected either way, to be so low scoring and for both sides to struggle to score against the opposing defense. I thought was just really interesting stylistically that's what it came down to, but it made for an interesting contrast. And, again, just credit to TCU for just having that that belief and that ability to not ever get too, panicked or get let the moment get too big for them. They just kind of stay steady, and in the end, so long as they have a chance at the end of the game, you're going to put your money on them to take it home more than you will probably any other team in the country right now, because that's just what they've done time and time and time again, and you keep waiting for them to run out of luck or whatever you want to, believe it is, but it's well beyond that at this point. It's just what they do, and they're very good. You can't expect them to lay down and roll over. They're going to fight till the very end, and that's why they're unbeaten right now, because if they didn't, then they wouldn't be. So just very impressed by their resiliency, and for them to go down there in a situation where, they could have had an off week, or they could have, not shown up like Baylor did, or whatever the case may be. But I think that they're well aware. I think they're having fun. I think that's very clear, and I think they're well aware of what a special group they have and what's on the horizon potentially for them, and they're using that as motivation and taking full advantage of it. And I think that's that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to love moments like that. So very impressed by that. And then K-State, they did basically whatever they wanted to against Baylor. That was an awfully disappointing showing for Baylor. K-State deserves an immense amount of credit for the way they performed in all three phases. But I think you can also say at the same time that was just an inexcusable kind of showing for the Bears. To have a home night crowd and to have an opponent like K-State walking in and to have Big 12, opportunities on the line, and to just get blown out on your home field, not score other than a field goal. A field goal, guys, that's all they mustered on offense. Now, granted, they didn't have a bunch of possessions, but that was what K-State drew up perfectly. I kept referring to it as basically what Baylor went to Lubbock and did, except for they did it way better, and there was never a question. Whereas with the game in Lubbock, the third quarter got a little close for a second there. But other than that, Baylor kind of controlled that game. This one, K-State never relinquished control. It was theirs ever since once Blake Shapen threw his first interception, the game was over after that. And it was
97 yards later.
Yeah, 97 yards later they score, and that helped. Yeah, that capped it off. But it's just like as soon as he threw that pick, and then they took it down the field and scored, as you said, 97 yards, which does need to be mentioned. That game was over, and it was a weird night. Like I don't even know how to feel about this football team, because here we are, we're 11 weeks into this thing, and they're still dealing with week one problems as far as chemistry, as far as focus, as far as their mental game. And I don't even know how is that even possible? Like, how is that even possible to be this deep into the season and still struggling with those types of things and motivation? Like, that's K-State, man. That's a top 25 team that's in the Big 12 mix, and you basically just rolled over.
One of the things I asked him, I'll let you continue. Dave Aranda, I had a chance to visit with him one-on-one. In the first part of his interview, he goes back into those three things that have been kind of an issue and how he wants his guys to see it green and all that. But I asked, you've been saying this for 10 weeks now.
Exactly.
And I asked him that. How can you be doing this 10 weeks into it? And I also asked him, just as a tease, do players perhaps take advantage of you and your demeanor or your personality? It's a fair question. And there are answers from Dave Aranda. Let me tell you something. He's sick to his stomach. He knows that the fans showed up, showed out, were loud. It was perfect. And yet his team was absolutely invisible.
If they had lost the game, that's fine. Lose the game, that's cool. But when you have a showing like that and you lose 34-3, and it's not even really that close, that's where it's like that's inexcusable. That's why I go back to that word, because it was so lopsided that there was never even really a fight. You never even really threw a punch, and that's the tough pill to swallow. There's no shame in losing to Kansas State, but there is in losing like that at home. In a night game with a nice crowd. This is how Tech felt a few weeks ago. When Baylor rolled in, kind of spoiled their night. I think it's similar to that in some ways, except for without the personal underlying kind of stuff bubbling. But give all the credit in the world to K-State. They handled their business, and now they're in the Big 12 race as a result.
You guys remember when Mike Tyson fought that McNeely guy?
Yeah.
It was like right after Tyson got out of prison, and McNeely was there, and you knew it was just going to be a warm-up fight for Tyson, but you thought it would have gone a couple rounds, and the minute that McNeely got punched by Mike Tyson, he said, "This is a bad idea. I'm stopping this."
Yeah.
That was kind of how it was the other night.
Here's the stat on Will. Craig, finish. Get the stat on Will Howard out for a second. Not yet. Not Garrett. Not yet. Garrett, take it down. Okay. Go ahead.
I lost my train of thought now.
All right. Here's a stat on Will Howard. The biggest decision in this game was this one. When Adrian Martinez, who has not been healthy, has not been 100%, got sacked on a 4th down by like 8 or 9 yards, had no chance. I'm not sure if he froze up, he just didn't read the defense, or Baylor just made a hell of a play because it looked like a hell of a play. Kansas State went to Will Howard. Here's his last 3 games. He has thrown 9 touchdowns his last 3 games, the most touchdown passes in 3 consecutive games by a Kansas State quarterback since Josh Freeman 14 years ago, Al Roberson 19 years ago, and Chad May back even earlier than that. He always was one step ahead or one decision or second away from sacks, sack strips, fumbles, whatever. He was amazing. You got to remember where you're going with that? Okay, all right. All right, so the Big 12 standings. TCU has a 2-game lead over Kansas State. Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas are all floundering, trying to figure out, can they catch K-State? They're all 4-3. Oklahoma State, OU. Baylor, TCU in Waco. Fox Saturday will be here. Texas at Kansas. We could all create whatever you want on that because of what KU's been able to do a couple of times. Texas Tech had a nice win, by the way, at home. And then TCU plays at Baylor. That game, of course, I mentioned that game. Texas Tech will be playing Iowa State, in Ames, who, again, not quite enough for them to win a game.
Yeah, I think the team I'm most curious about the next 2 weeks is Oklahoma. They've got to get one more win to get in a bowl game. Tech have to get one more win, right? Tech does. So both of them have to get one more win. If either of them lose this week, then next week is going to be super interesting. Especially if both of them lose next week.
Texas Tech and Oklahoma have 5. West Virginia, Iowa State each have 4. There's 6 teams that have qualified for a bowl.
Yeah, so that could get super interesting. Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders coming off the bench, playing banged up and leading them to a win over Iowa State. But that was the definition of Iowa State pain. That's what they've been going through this year, where everything seems to be in their control if they can just get some offense, and then they lost because that's been what they are. I'm still kind of shocked at West Virginia's win, but they've got other issues they're dealing with now. So we'll see how, and if any of these teams can get 2 or just the 1 to finish out the season and get to a bowl game.
Yeah, I think that was an inexcusable in some ways, and I'm probably using that word too much now. That was an atrocious loss for Iowa State. It's an atrocious loss. I don't know, man. That team just all year, I mean, they played really hard on defense, and you give them credit for that. But just the Hunter Decker's experience has not been good. That Oklahoma State team is all banged up, and they're able to just have, Spencer Sanders come in and save the day there at the end because they weren't getting much out of Gunnar Gundy and the rest of what they were trying to do offensively. So terrific job by Sanders to come in and basically do just enough to give them that extra edge they needed in a really low-scoring game. But that's atrocious. Atrocious to lose that football game if you're Iowa State. And I'm really curious to know where they go, the last couple of weeks and how that looks for them. And then, how they retool in the offseason, because last year they had a little bit of hype because of all their seniors, standouts, and Matt Campbell's like, no, that's you putting this pressure on us. We're not looking at it that way. I don't look at it that way. And it's like, okay. And then you turn around this year and you don't have all those guys and you're really struggling. It's like, oh, maybe you think you missed a window? You think maybe that's what people were trying to point out? So whether or not that was your expectation, like it was your window for at least right now, because that window appears to be like concrete around it right now. I don't think like Hunter Deckers is inspiring people to lead them to believe that, you're a step away from being back to where you were just a year ago. I don't think that run game's anywhere close to having you believe that you're going to be dominating the way you were dominating with the likes of, the Breece Halls of the world the last few years. So the David Montgomerys, that's not there right now. So yeah, very, very tough season for Iowa State. I mean, they could technically still make a bowl game, although that seems like a long shot, but terrific win for Oklahoma State. I mean, what a gutsy win for them. Nice job by Spencer Sanders to come in when called upon, even though he's clearly not 100% healthy, and, doing just enough, like I said, to win that game. So, yeah, very impressed that Oklahoma State was able to win that game, and they're still in the Big 12 mix. Like, it seems impossible because it feels as though they've, lost 4 games just because the last month has not been great for them. But it's actually not been as bad as maybe it's been perceived. And as a result, they're kind of still sort of in this thing at 7-3 and 4-3 in the conference. So I have to root for a little bit of chaos. And K-State can just win this weekend and it's over. It's K-State and TCU. But if craziness were to erupt, Oklahoma State would still have kept themselves in a position. But yeah, very interesting to see the heroics from Spencer Sanders, and nice win for them.
It was a great win for Oklahoma State because they've been slipping. A lot of it attrition, a lot of it is issues that they have had as well. All right, Garrett, let's go through. You saw the Will Howard tweet. Don Williams on what Joey McGuire today had to say about the Texas Tech job. Tyler Shuck starting. Expects him to start second straight game. Donovan Smith available in packages again. Just to have Barron, if anything crazy happens. Texas Tech, that was a nice win because it could have been really rough in Lubbock had they not beaten Kansas at home.
The reason I picked Kansas was because because Tyler Shuck was going to start, and we hadn't seen anything from him that would inspire you to think that he was capable of leading them to a victory at this point. But he played very, very, very well, and Tech won the game. Now Kansas's defense still has a ton of problems. I just thought that, just because of how Shuck had played when we'd seen him, it was probably not in the cards for him, but he certainly proved me wrong this week.
I actually looked at it quite the opposite because he was a starter to start the year. We just never got to see him because he got hurt so quickly. So, this was their guy to start the season, and Smith and Morton were their guys because they had to be. And so I think that I looked at it a bit differently in that it's at your place. You're in desperate need of a win if you want any chance at a bowl game. Kansas is good, but they're not by any stretch an unbeatable team, especially walking in on the road into Lubbock. And, then you have, if that had been Donovan Smith, I probably would have given it some thought. Maybe Kansas does come in and get a couple of picks. If it was Barron Morton, I think I probably would have gone Tech. But with it being Tyler Shuck, I just felt like, okay, that was their guy originally. He's an older guy at this point, and I just thought that that would be, a nice kind of reset for them at quarterback, and having obviously the need to win that game and having it be at home. I just felt like that was going to be a little bit too much for Kansas, and it was to Tech's credit, but Kansas, to their credit, they fought and had their opportunities in this game, no doubt, but just a little bit too much from the Red Raiders. So good win for Joey McGuire.
Danny Davis from the Austin American-Statesman, this earlier today in a tweet from him on a story about the UT defense. It was all in the same email, Garrett. All right, Texas has played 3 teams that currently are boasting top 15 scoring offenses: Alabama, TCU, and UTSA. All 3 did not score 20 points or more. All did not get over 20. And yet they lost 2 of those games to Alabama and then TCU in that game 17-10. Held each of those teams to their season low point totals in their games at Royal Memorial Stadium. Alabama, TCU again winning, and then, of course, Texas beating UTSA, and that game was kind of hanging around until sometime in the third quarter or so.
Yeah, their defense is greatly improved. You can't help but think that Gary Patterson has something to do with it, and just another year in the system has something to do with it. But, yeah, I thought after the first half of Texas and TCU that maybe the offenses would open up, like maybe it was just so tense and tight, and that's how it went, but it just did not. And Quinn Ewers had a rough game, but the defense kept them in it the whole time. They just needed one more possession where they would have scored, and there's a completely different game, but they just didn't have it. But they did certainly have it on defense, other than the wide-open touchdown that they gave up to Quentin Johnson and the super long run to Kendry Miller.
Yeah, that was impressive by TCU to pop those plays. Kudos to Texas' defense. Without a doubt, they played really well. Saw, shots of Patterson down there on the sidelines, and he's obviously very heavily invested, and had to be a weird night for him to see the team he's with and the team that he helped build basically these last few years and, program the last couple of decades. But that was a gutsy win for TCU to go down there, on the road with all the pressure they have on their shoulders. And like I said a few minutes ago, they, are just capable of keeping their cool and letting it play out to the very end, and not, unlike this Baylor team, they don't get punched in the mouth and just completely fold up like Saturday. They know that there's 4 quarters of fight, and so they stay in the fight, good or bad, and eventually they land the last punch. And that leaves you undefeated. You know, you done about win. We won the first half. We won the first quarter. TCU's like, we'll just win at the end of the game. We'll keep it close. Even if we lose a lead, we'll just keep our cool and we'll go win a game. And that's what they do, and that's why they are where they are, and everybody else is where they are in the Big 12 standings. But I think Texas showed some things that you like. I do think it's funny, though, that Quinn Ewers was the golden child. And I know there will be people that say, well, I didn't think that. I always thought it should be Hudson Card, or I think it's Arch, or whatever the case may be. But you absolutely cannot deny, whether you had any part in it or not, the amount of hype and buildup for Quinn Ewers that we heard about. And it's all because of NIL, really. I mean, that's why he was so hyped up, and that's fine. I mean, good for him to get cash in his pockets and, use his name, image, likeness to, launch, other careers perhaps, or marketing stuff. But there's got to be disappointment there. And I see some people, no, it's not really. That's 8-4 would be happy with that. I'm sure that some fans would be. But I don't know how you're looking at Quinn Ewers right now and not going like, oh my gosh, like, were we wrong about this? And I think he's just young. He's got to play some more football games. But given like where the hype machine was just a few weeks ago, especially after that Alabama game of like, well, if he doesn't get hurt, they're undefeated. Do we still believe that now at this point? Because he's played a lot and they're still losing football games. So it's just been interesting to see that kind of that fall from, not grace, but just
his name
reality
was in some of the
setting
Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
reality setting in that, no, he's just a freshman quarterback like everybody else, and he's not God's gift to the sport, but that's how he was treated before ever playing it down in Austin.
With a golden arm. No question about it, but Aranda, they'll question is 14 of 37 or 19 of 42, whatever some of these numbers, Oklahoma State. And this one, Oklahoma State, was apparently his hand or finger. This was a different animal, and he could not hit people. And TCU deserves credit for a lot of that, too.
What have we been saying about Texas, though? Just let it happen. Let Quinn Ewers have his growing pains, and don't expect him to completely change your program in a year. And I think there's this thought that he was, because he could have gone to Texas, he went to Ohio State, and then he transferred back to Texas, that Ohio State, he was just waiting, there. But when you asked anybody from Ohio State, like, was there ever a thought that he could – make C.J. Stroud even turn around and notice he was there? They're like, no. And there's a gap there. So if you want to be where C.J. Stroud is, you've got to get to that time. He's not there yet. He's got certainly a lot of talent, but let him get there.
Yeah. Well, a Texas fan will tell you that he went there just to get his NIL deal, and he played the whole system, which if he did, that was genius, because he showed up, past a point where he probably could have, in theory, won that job from a C.J. Stroud. And so business-wise, he is the Heisman Trophy winner. But actual on-the-field-wise, there's a long way to go there. And I'm not going to pretend for 1 second like there wasn't this tidal wave of hype about him in the offseason. I mean, to try and rewrite history, we're not going to allow that. There was a tidal wave of talk about him, and whether fair or not the expectations, I just kept saying, like, I can't wait to just see him play. And you see the good, you see the potentially great, but you also see just the reality as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he closes out these last 3 games, and then it'll be the Arch Manning arrival. And, I know people are already split on that, and then you throw in the other quarterbacks they have in that room, and it's going to be very interesting to see how all that, sorts itself out.
Yeah, let it happen. And, Paul, you make that comment. Okay, a couple other notes. Chase Brown, Illinois' Brett Bielema, saying that his leg is trending in the right direction. He went down in their loss this past weekend to Purdue. Also, Bo Nix went out for a little bit in that Oregon loss. That was a shocker to Washington. Shocker, maybe not the case. Washington competitive. Lost in Washington, though. Lost in Eugene. He came back. He said he wanted to play. The staff said, the trainer said it's okay, medical staff. He came in. So just kind of watch for that as well when it comes to some of the bigger injuries. It was great to see Spencer Sanders come back in that game. Now, we have a guest on the West Virginia firing of Shane Lyons. Dave Aranda one-on-one. And if you're a Baylor fan and you want some fiery brimstone speech or anything like that, you're not going to get it. But I do try to ask him about what Craig brought up about what he said in the postgame about the tug of war with this team about getting ready. Like, you're 10 games in. I discussed that. I had discussed the quarterback change. Did they ever think about that during the game? If you'll remember 2020, and I brought up Charlie Brewer, that offense was horrific. And he never ever, none of them, they never went to Jacob Zeno. I think there might have been the last game and Charlie went out. That was the last time he took a snap at Baylor. And I asked him about his loyalty to Charlie, who then eventually left. And is that kind of the same thing with Blake? This is not just to bury a quarterback like Blake Shapen, but it's something's missing. And it could be the young receivers. They aren't getting separation. K-State's defensive secondary shut them out. Shut them down. So, not out, but shut them down. So I do ask him about that, and he has a story about Blake Shapen last night in the football offices that he shares with us on 365 Sports today at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, you just reminded me finally of what I was trying to say earlier, and that was the whole this team not being motivated or ready to play on any given week. I mean, the Jekyll and Hyde comparison has been thrown out there, and it's appropriate because, dude, when we come in to pick these games, like, some of them are just crapshoots. Like, you get, UCF Tulane turned out the way that it did, and Texas TCU turned out the way that it did. Like, nobody saw a low-scoring game in Austin coming, and TCU just makes a play and they win. That's fine, but, like, Baylor to lose 34-3. I mean, come on. I mean, what it even is, like, and the fact that you can't pinpoint, like, you think that they would probably then turn around and get their heads kicked in by TCU, but this would be the game that they go win now. And that's what's so frustrating is, like, if you are just be a bad team. If you're a good team, be a good team. But they're very much a middle-of-the-road team, and that's fine, and you can deal with that because 8-4, there's nothing to spit on there. Following a year where you won the league and you won a Sugar Bowl and you lost a bunch of dudes to the NFL, the most you've ever lost to the NFL, like, there's going to be some drop-off. That's fine. You can't win the title. You can't be in the title game every single year. Not even Alabama does that anymore, right? But to not even have a clue when you show up as a fan or media member or shoot as a player week to week or as Dave Aranda doesn't even know week to week what kind of team he's going to get, that's alarming. And the fact that he is saying that same thing basically in so many ways, the same few things in so many ways that he was saying in week number 1, in week number 11, there's just no excuse for that.
Well, and I asked him about that, and we'll get his answer from that. Good point. I still cannot imagine. And no matter with his all TCU, that game could have been like 30-3. It really could have been. They missed a field goal earlier. It was deflected, missed it. They were down in the red zone a couple of different times. So was UT. But then you had the fluky, but also incredible play by Jahdae Barron to run it back, a fumble on Max Duggan. It would have been 17-3, game over. 22 carries for 28 yards, including a couple of those yardage, minus 15 sacks of viewers. How in the hell does Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, both guys are really good, end up with 17 carries for 43 yards in a game that was very much still up for grabs early in the fourth quarter? How in the world do you throw the ball 39 times? I know that means you can't move the ball, running the ball. It's obvious with my stats. I think you have to keep pounding those guys some way. And there was a wheel route that they missed with Bijan, but golly, that's crazy.
I do think that offensive coaches sometimes they forget about what the spread between them actually is. Like, in a game like that,
the spread, not out in Vegas spread.
Yeah, but like you're only down 17-3. Like, that only gets crisis point where you have to throw all the time in the last 7-8 minutes, right? Before that, you can run, but TCU shutting it down,
Paul,
and then you start thinking.
It was 10-3 until 2 minutes into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 10-3. Keep feeding the thing. But I do think that once you say run 5 run plays in a row and it doesn't work, you're like, I can't,
Yeah. Okay. Well, Craig, you finish it out, and then we take a break.
What did you say it was going in the fourth quarter?
It was 10-3.
So I don't care about all this. If TCU had done, I know you bring that up because there's some fans like, well, it should have been different if only this would. Well, yeah, everything would have been different for Baylor on Saturday night if Blake Shapen doesn't throw an interception. But that's why these games turn out to be closer than you expect, is because things don't go perfectly for you. So yeah, maybe TCU could have won by more at some point, but that's not how games go. That's plays happen, and you're in a dogfight suddenly in Austin. But besides that, I don't know. I mean, I would have to listen to what Sark had to say. Does he have press conference on Mondays?
Yeah, he does.
Okay, yeah. I know Venables does like Tuesdays, and others do other days. But I'll have to go listen to Sark and see if he said anything about that. I didn't get to do that before the show. But yeah, you would think like you got those hosses in the backfield, I would use them as much as possible. I mean, I think Roschon Johnson's a freaking stud. Bijan obviously is as well. And there would never be a game where you question why my running backs, if I was the Texas head coach, didn't get enough burn, especially in a low-scoring game where my quarterback can't hit the side of a barn. But I mean, that's one of the complaints I saw on Saturday night. Sarkisian's not 100%. He doesn't have a 100% acceptance rate. I think most UT fans like him, but I definitely think a lot of them also see the flaws in him as a coach right now. And, there's an area where you can point to and say, well, why didn't or what if and what not from Saturday night.
Cedric Golden earlier on the Sarkisian presser. Sarkisian on the passing game and Ewers. In the end, it's about precision, that timing. Asked if Quinn is looking for Xavier Worthy too much. He said Ewers is going where the play is called. Asked about Quinn Ewers' footwork and mechanics. He's doing a nice job. And there is a tug of war, just like there is right now with Baylor, just like there was in 2020, like there was at the end of last year when Bohannon went down and Chapin took over. It's that pendulum of emotion of who's going to help you right now. It happens to a lot of different teams. Like think what Tech's going through right now and what Kansas State fans are going through right now.
Yeah, Sarkisian didn't lie. I mean, he is going where the play told him to, but I think that's what one of the complaints is that he's going to, his first read and not really doing too much after that. So, I don't know. I'll leave it to the film junkies and the X's and O's experts that cover Texas to break all of that down. But, yeah, I mean, there's some flaws in his game right now, and one of them might be sticking too much on a certain guy or sticking too much to his first read or, not just being as accurate as he needs to be. And, again, he's not played a full season yet, but there was, a different type of hype that this isn't just some 3-star kid coming in that you go, like, let him play it out. Like, no, there were expectations pretty much right out the gates. And right now, he's not quite living up to that, but we have seen flashes, and it's curious to know why.
We'll come back with a story, the firing of Shane Lyons at West Virginia, what's behind the scenes, what happened, what was the final straw, what was the breaking point. And I've been told that it could be the fact that when they decided to give Neil Brown an extension, which put him on the hook for, $11 million or so in I guess you could say in a buyout, that one of the stories behind that was the fact South Carolina was nibbling on Neil Brown when they were going through their coaching search, and perhaps that was why they decided they needed to move on and give him an extension, or at least an extension, which is an $11 million buyout. But I'm not in Morgantown, and we'll have a guest who is. In fact, he's going to join us next. Mike Casazza of 247 Sports. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. How? Well, let him set up an appointment. First of all, you got to contact him. Go online, PettyClinicLowT.com. Top left-hand corner, there's an email and a phone number. Tell them I sent you. They will tell them why you're there. Testosterone concerns. Is it too low? What are the symptoms? Lack of sleep, lack of focus, lack of energy, lack of sex drive, ED, all of the above, some of it. They will set you up and they'll get you an appointment to get your blood work. He will get the results, look at them, and if your testosterone level is too low, Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you have a chance to get back to being who you want to be. Who you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Tell them I sent you. PettyClinicLowT.com.
This month, Allen Samuelson Waco is having the Black Friday sales event. You can save big on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab with total values up to $4,250 with 2.9% for 72 months. That's right, plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders and no payments until January 2023. Shop an award-winning dealership with award-winning product. Allen Samuelson Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks.
Come by. Let's be friends.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your home for holiday favorites for parties or time with the family, with various specials available while supplies last in store or ordering by phone, including 8 to 10 pound half spiral hams at $4.15 a pound, 12-pound pit hams at $4.35 a pound, 8 to 22-pound bone-in hams for $3.40 a pound, 14 to 16-pound whole raw turkeys at $2.85 a pound, and $4.80 a pound for 9 to 12-pound whole smoked turkeys, 6 to 8-pound mini pit hams for $5.99 a pound. Limit 4 of each item per customer. Call in advance to ensure availability or drop by Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Waco Custom Marketplace, your full-service butcher shop for customized orders or cuts of your favorite steaks or beef tenderloin or specially ordered prime rib roast. WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
One of the bigger stories, again, we talked earlier today to open up the show, the tragedy in Charlottesville, Virginia. And that one, of course, takes precedent in all the tragedy and the sadness there. The other one from earlier today that caught a lot of people's attention, West Virginia, Shane Lyons out as athletic director at West Virginia. And Mike Casazza joins us now on 365 Sports from 247 Sports, covers the Mountaineers. Mike, thank you very much for your time. We knew that someone was going down, it seemed like, at some point, whether it was Neil Brown first or Shane Lyons. Thanks for your time. Was it surprising it was Shane, or does that now lead to Neil Brown?
Yeah, they put the horse in front of the cart here, I think. They're both going down the road that they're going down, but they had to go together, and it probably didn't matter what order they were probably both going to go, but this kind of makes it clear that they're both going. I think if they had gotten rid of Neil Brown after really coming out flat and playing very poorly in a loss to Iowa State, you would think that the athletic director would be at the helm and in charge of things. There's no doubt that's not the case now. And I think that if you follow college sports, you understand that you are not bringing in an athletic director and saying, this is your football coach for some amount of time and come back in a year. West Virginia is being pretty ambitious here about, and even saying, like in the press release, saying that they plan to have somebody in 3 to 4 weeks. I'm not talking as an answer to a question in a news conference. The actual press release announcing the firing of the athletic director says that they will have a national search wrapped up in 3 to 4 weeks, which, why put that time frame in there? Because there's 12 days left in the regular season. You have about that 4 week period before the signing day starts here. They're moving here to do something, which is probably a double barrel kind of a thing, where athletic director out, athletic director in, and that athletic director, I would imagine, part of the interviewing or vetting process would be, hey, by the way, what would you do about replacing Neil Brown and make the best answer win?
So, Mike, if they were going to do this anyway, then why not fire the AD 3 weeks ago when that happened? Or did this come to a head to a certain point where it had to happen now?
Yeah, I don't think that there was any sort of dispute in the cafeteria or anything like that that made this no longer tenable. They started 0-2 for the first time in 43 years, and that is fresh off a contract extension in between Brown's second and third season. So right about a year at that point, they'd been on this extension that frankly didn't make sense. They were 5-7 and then 6-4, but I think people really wanted Brown to succeed and liked him and thought that he was going to be a good fit. And everybody celebrated the hire and eventually came around to believe that this isn't working out because maybe he's not great at coaching, maybe a great person, but those are two different things. The fact that Lyons was in charge of the hiring had some goodwill attached to it, that expires when your team doesn't win. And when all of a sudden you realize that maybe you can't make a change because you attached a very one-sided buyout to the contract that maybe you can't get out from under, people get mad. And then when that $16.7 million is hanging above your head and you can't do anything and your football team continues to gravitate toward the bottom of the conference, people get really mad. And just, frankly, someone's got to go at that point. Like you can't let those mistakes go, especially when they're at the top, when the top may have to come down from the ivory tower and act on somebody, a different sport, somebody else that's an administrator, whatever. It doesn't work that way. So the person who got them into this mess was not going to be the person that got them out of it. Why now is a very good question. They had a regularly scheduled board meeting of their board of governors on Friday. My understanding is that it was made pretty clear to the president after that the board wanted to change. And here we are 72 hours later, by the time that this all gets wrapped up and finished, and it's done. So this was on the tracks, and I think that they pretty much just pulled the blocks out and let this thing roll. And then this is just the first move here. It doesn't make any sense that it would be the only one. I just think that had they lost to Oklahoma Saturday, which a lot of people anticipated, that's their seventh loss. They can't reach a bowl. It makes sense to get rid of the coach. If people are anxious and antsy, and you're going to change both of them, at least let them know that somebody's out and change is coming. And they did that in the form of the athletic director.
So, Mike, what is the status and belief as far as Neil Brown's buyout and what they can or can't do, how much of an impediment that might be? Because that was kind of the talk I remember seeing, weeks back when this first started bubbling up as far as this season goes was, the buyout's enormous. But what's kind of the truth there?
Yeah, so it's enormous. That's the truth. But
okay.
It's not one thing where you wake up one morning and it's significantly less than it was when you went to bed. There's no date where it drops off a cliff. That's upcoming. He's due every penny from today until the end of his contract, which runs through 2026. It's outrageous, but that's what it is. I don't know why Shane Lyons did that, but he did. And that's a huge deal right now because in 23, 24, 25, and 26, he's due $16.7 million. And if they get rid of him soon, he's due all of that plus whatever he's due from the day he's terminated until the beginning of the next calendar year. So you're talking, again, 16.7, a little bit of change. It's a huge number. And it just goes down a little bit every day. It's prorated basically. So he's, it's less tomorrow than it is today, and it's less on Wednesday than it was on Tuesday. It just kind of goes down marginally. He would get paid out once a month for every month in the remainder of his contract, which goes through 2026. So he could very slowly make $16.7 million. It's offset slightly by what he would make at a new job. So if he agrees to the payment schedule, which is again monthly through the end of the calendar year 2026, and if he becomes an offensive coordinator in the Power Five, a head coach of the Group of Five, West Virginia owes him less what he's making at his new job. So again, let's just use $4 million as a round number. If he gets hired at, I don't know what's a job that's open right now. I'm trying to think. I don't know. If he gets hired at State University in Alabama, let's say, and he's making $1 million, well, then West Virginia only owes him $3 million for that year. So it's kind of offset like that. What's interesting now, though, is if Brown would just like to get his money and get this over with and not have to wait 4 years, he can negotiate the sum. That's not going to be $16.7 million. I don't know where that goal is from each side. I'm sure West Virginia wants to be closer to zero, and Brown wants to be closer to 16.7. how do they find a common ground? It's not going to be a middle ground, I know that, but how do they find a number that's good for both of them? That's why you pay agents and lawyers so much money, but that's the one way that they could actually complete this transaction, by paying him a big chunk right now, and it won't be the whole thing, but it would be less than what they would commit themselves to paying to across 4 years.
Mike, any truth to the fact they extended him with all of what goes with it because South Carolina was nibbling and or because they were rewarding him for helping change maybe the culture in Morgantown, and they thought that would help stabilize things?
I think people really wanted Brown to be good, and sometimes I've asked myself for the past couple of years, I don't know who they're convincing. Are they trying to convince fans and media, or are they trying to convince themselves? And that comes to reviews of players or sides of the ball or games or anything like that. But in this situation, it was Neil Brown. Again, a 500 coach who was under 500 and then slightly above in the pandemic year, lost a lot of players to the portal after his first 2 seasons. And all of a sudden you're thinking, well, they're really committed to this. What do they see that I don't see? And the answer is now is nothing. We had the benefit of the hindsight. They did not. So just a miscalculation, I think, is a big one. And yeah, I think that there were indications he had things going. I think that they were so happy about getting him and being celebrated for it that it obscured their view of reality. And accomplishments were probably made to be greater than they were in reality. And if you have an SEC school knocking on your door, you flinch a little bit. And West Virginia had just lost a head coach who'd been here for 8 years to a group of 5 program, a good group of 5 program, but it's a place that can happen. I mean, and certainly West Virginia is not going to keep a head coach from an SEC job, even if it's South Carolina. Just the question, though, is, was he really a candidate at Auburn? Was he really a candidate at South Carolina? Those are the two that he was linked to. And I can just frankly tell you, I knew people who were involved in the search of South Carolina, and they quickly told me this is not true. And he got extended off of that. So does he have a good agent who knew how to play the game? Absolutely. Did West Virginia get bluffed? Yeah, probably. But at the moment, they thought it was a defensible position, but it did not take long for that to kind of fall apart in their hands.
Who do you think is the next AD? Or maybe a couple of names. I saw where Mullins at Oregon was somebody that was named. He's a West Virginia guy. I think there's a assistant AD at Georgia that might have been at West Virginia in the past. Any thoughts about who might be the target list?
Yeah, you've been online today, huh? Rob Mullins would be the big one. He's at Oregon. They tried to get him in 2015. He does have the West Virginia connections. He's from here. He did all that stuff at school. They tried in 2015. He said, man, I got a great thing. He probably still has a great thing there right now, but he's gone through a lot of football searches and tumult there with coaches. His conference situation is TBD right now. Do they end up in a new Pac-12? Do they end up in the Big Ten? Don't know. He's got a pretty good, but you have a lot fewer worries here. So that would be interesting. Oliver Luck would be a guy that I think would be an interesting name just as a comeback, and maybe he just comes in again for a short amount of time and fixes things, which is last time. Got them out of the Big East and the Big 12, fixed their football situation. Similar things have to happen here with football, with how the sun sets on Bob Huggins' career, so on and so forth. I just don't think that he wants to do that. I think he's very happy doing what he's doing now. People have told me that it would be very surprising if he left a life that he's cultivated now to do something he did before and grew out of. And then from there, it's other names. You know, you mentioned Georgia. That's Kevin Miller. He was like a young, ambitious fundraiser here. He's got it going very well at fundraising at Georgia. No offense to Kevin, who I know and like, but it's very easy there, I'm sure. Can he make it work as the athletic director here? I don't know. Kelly Zinn was Shane's deputy here. She left for the job at LSU in the off season. She's been there for a while. I don't know that she's been there for so long that she suddenly learned a whole lot of things that people maybe wanted her to acquire as some sort of apprenticeship as the deputy at LSU, that all of a sudden it makes sense. Like, okay, she went off and she's learned so much, she's better to come back now. That probably doesn't exist quite yet. And she's very close to Lyons and Brown too. I think people might be slow to embrace that. There is Whit Babcock, who is, again, similar, attaches to the university. Having been here before as a fundraiser way back when Rich was here, Rich Rodriguez, worked in Missouri, was the AD at Cincinnati, and has been at Virginia Tech for a couple of years. Could he do it? So there's traditional names and hires and identities, but I just listening to the president and the interim AD today, they keep talking about how the job is different. You have to have a multifaceted candidate who's good at, you know, branding, marketing, innovation, all these words that sound really good in the boardroom, but maybe not in a football office or athletic department. You're thinking, you know, how outside the box can they go here? And just the name I think is very interesting to consider, whether it's him or someone like him, would be Alex Hammond, who is an agent for Athletes First. He was Dana Holgerson's director of operations here for the entire time. He was an assistant athletic director at the longer he was here. Prior to that, though, a Northwestern grad, the student body president at Texas, he worked in the White House, he worked in the government, he worked in the NCAA offices, and people say, wow, what a messy situation to walk into at West Virginia. Well, sure, but here's an agent who's going to know coaching candidates and agents for myriad searches. He knows his way around the NCAA boardroom. He could deal with dysfunction because he worked in the government. So I'm pretty sure he can handle the boardrooms in Morgantown. Again, different, but a guy who boosters really like and who has seen the highs and lows of different athletic directors, knows how it's supposed to work and knows what contributes to mistakes. Obtuse name, but an identity of a candidate that if it's not him specifically, it may be someone who profiles like him, not somebody who came from Alabama or who came from the ACC office, not a former player or a former executive or administrator at the school, but someone who could do the work because he's very familiar with the duties and responsibilities, everything that goes into the job that you might not necessarily think is attached to his resume, but he's familiar with it.
So since you don't know who the AD is going to be, it makes it hard to develop a potential head coaching candidate pool, wouldn't it?
Well, I've been doing that for months, so hopefully someone in West Virginia has too. What's interesting here is whose hand is in whose pocket. Because if this was something that came from the Board of Governors as recently as Friday, and all of a sudden the athletic director's out, just a couple of days later, who is making the decision here? Is this going to be like an Auburn or Tennessee situation where they kind of let the fox in the hen house, so to speak? Maybe. Is that bad? Maybe not. There will be a lot of people who want to turn back the clock and go to glory days and bring back like a Rich Rodriguez guy because they have money and influence, and they had a lot of fun back then, and football hasn't been that fun here since then. There might be people who are on boards or committees who just have influence and say, well, why don't we do this and talk to this person? It'll be interesting to see what they do and who they go for. But I think that what's probably the best thing to do is consider like what football was and what it's become here. They're not good, but they're not fun either. And college football is supposed to be fun. And when you've got, 45 and 50,000 people who are kind of dreading coming to a game, and just anecdotally here, people were kind of upset that they have their first win against Oklahoma because of a fear that, well, maybe Neil Brown saved his job. It's a terrible thing to say, but that's the reality. They kind of thought that a loss would seal it, their seventh loss, regime change, get somebody come in and do something new because it's not being fun here. And fun is a weird word, but like that's also something that Brown said in the offseason. They were going to be more fun, and they were going to be, more of a players program behind the scenes and not have them around as often and change their schedules so their demands about being in the building aren't there. So fun in the field, fun behind the scenes, it's been lacking. So a name, that'd be one thing, but two, their offense has just been blah. Their defense hasn't been very good. They're very ordinary. And when you go back to when West Virginia was really good in the Big 12, their defense was a 3-3-5 odd stack, odd because of numbers, but also odd because no one else played it. And that's pretty common now. So that's not even a fun thing anymore for their defense. And when they were at their peak and knocking on the door of the national championship, they had Pat White, Steve Slayton, Noah Devine, Darius Renard, Owen Schmidt, on and on and on. And they played this read option, zone read, triple option offense that nobody had. They've been air raid for 12 years now. They don't have the recruiting prowess and the personnel prowess to do the same thing that everybody else is doing and be better at it. They just don't have the players and the sideline people to do that. Why are they trying to do it? I would be interested in seeing who they hire, but I would be really interested in seeing how they're going to play offensively and defensively to be different and dynamic and thus more fun and more influential again.
Mike, I asked around to who we should get in touch with today. We have, of course, had some of those who do the games, Jed and obviously Tony, but I'm glad we got you, man. Good stuff. Great insight. Fantastic, in fact. Thanks for your time.
Well, thanks to Jed for propping me up. I'll owe him one, but don't let him know that, okay?
I will never repeat that until I text him in 5 minutes. Thanks for your time. Mike Casazza, great segment on West Virginia, the change at AD, and what it might mean.
Yeah, he explained it all really well there. I mean, I think he could just drop the mic as he hung up the phone because I don't think we're going to get a better, piece of insight into, what's going on right now in Morgantown, and all of it makes sense. I mean, that's the feeling I got after they beat Baylor. Talk about this Baylor, team being up and down, but when they lost in Morgantown and, West Virginia got that win, it was like, okay, hopefully that's a spark of some sort. And then they turned right around and just got beat, back-to-back weeks like that Baylor win never happened. And that's exactly what I thought when they beat Oklahoma. It's like, I think I even said on the pregame show, I think I might have, do their fans even cheer this? Like, do they even get excited about beating Oklahoma? Because that means that's good news for Neil Brown. And sure enough, they didn't like it. They didn't. So, yeah, you can't even enjoy wins because you're afraid that they're going to keep the guy that you don't really like around and more secure, that's a really just not fun spot to be in. So it sounds like change is long overdue for that reason and many others that he laid out there. And we'll see if they can, find the right people. But yeah, gotta find an AD and probably a head football coach. Just right now an AD, but definitely more to come there.
Iowa State's athletic director, Jamie Pollard, will join us at the bottom of the hour. He's on the men's basketball committee. We'll discuss some things with him. And then also coming up next, my conversation with Baylor football coach Dave Aranda. In 2020, everyone thought maybe he was over his head. In 2021, he was the coach of the year, and he was a genius. And now there's some, what's going on? Is he, again, when you don't win, is he's tough enough or fiery enough? I asked him that. I asked him about Blake Shapen quarterback position when they made that decision. What's gone wrong? Kyron Drones. Didn't say much about that, but I asked him. Also, what the hell happened Saturday other than the fact Kansas State came in here, Chris Kleiman's team beat them up. And he knows. And that's next. And this is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace here in Waco on the southern part just off I-35 and Highway 6. This is a place that can help you find out what is bothering you, whether it's something in your shoulder, your back, your knee, your ankle, somewhere in your body that might be just almost to the point where it hurts so much you go to the doctor. And maybe they've been working on it or trying to find it. An X-ray didn't. So they ask for an MRI. They want an MRI. They tell you an MRI. They can find it. An MRI will either find something that's wrong, or if there's nothing to find, then that's an answer too. And they'll also do it for $497 or less every single time. Imagine that. Getting what you need, like film of a football game. You know if you missed a block or you didn't run the right route. They're going to find that in your body, if it's a muscle, a tendon, a ligament, whatever. IdealMRI.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics.
Find out why more Central Texans are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Squirrel Williams, the running back on 3rd down and 9. The tight end Johnson goes in motion over the middle. It's tipped and intercepted. Savage has got it.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Vaughn's got the ball. He's got a first down and more. Across midfield, breaking tackles, and inside the 40 of Baylor. Deuce got loose, and the Cats are rolling.
This segment on Baylor Athletics on Sikkim 365 Radio is brought to you by Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac. Learn more at richardcarr.com.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Baylor football coach Dave Aranda with me, David Smoak, 365 Sports. You have mentioned this a lot throughout the year, and you said this in the postgame. And first of all, thanks for your time as always, that there's a tug of war, that you kind of have a tug of war on whether or not whoever, player, position, team is ready. And honestly, how can that be 10 weeks into the season? How frustrating is that?
I appreciate the question. I think there's a fair amount of anxiety would be one thing. I think our players get it into their head, and it prevents them from showing up or responding, I guess, to adversity the way that you like, and you see reactions instead. I think that's one. Then I think the other thing that pops up is that there's been some growth in just the discipline off the field with the team, and I think that it's really the best training for what comes up on the field is when you're doing all the little things right off the field. And I kind of hate to bring it up back to that, but it's just so foundational, and I feel like I've failed, I think, in that category to really reach as many people as I could, or I could have. And so, I think there's guys that, whether they're young players that are still learning, or there's, older players that have maybe graduated, that want to come back to maybe win another thing. Mm-hmm. And then just all the details that have to be on point, and all of the learning specialists that have to be on time, and the classes that have to be, you have to be prepared for, and the papers that have to be due on time, and just all those things. I think that is a second thing. And then I want to say just the third would be the ability to, within a system, play green. And so to be yourself when you're with us. And so to not just be a robotic or not just go off and do your own thing, but to kind of be within a system and then play and really kind of express yourself. And I think there's some good examples of that last year. I think there's some examples of that this year too, but just not enough.
You've brought that up a lot this year. Mm-hmm. Is it disappointing that they haven't gotten it, that it's still a battle?
Yeah, I think, for me, it just shows how tough communication can be. I think it probably makes me better. My hope is that for our team, that individually for them, personally for them, it's going to end up making them better. Because I think at some point they'll get it. I don't know. I think at some point,
you're running out of time.
At some point, I think they'll get it. Well, I'm just talking for life. I'm just talking for life.
Sure.
That they'll understand and they'll get it. And then I for the guys that are on our team right now that have gotten it. And there's Mike Makuza is a guy I'm really proud of his growth. Apuaika is a guy I'm really proud of with his growth. TJ Franklin's a guy I'm really proud of with his growth. Even Connor Galvin, beginning of the year, kind of feeling all pumped up with just what was said about him. And we kind of lost him for a little bit and we got him back. And so there's just so much with those guys, just that it transcends football. But when it turns on for them, I mean, you really get to see them, and it's just way cool. But for a few, it's probably more than a few. For others, it's been difficult.
In 2020, the thoughts, again, you and I spoke about this many times, about who you are, your demeanor. Tony Dungy, Lovie Smith, Tom Landry, and I'm mentioning them because of their demeanor. Doesn't mean there's not a fire in your stomach. And then 2021, you're a genius. And all the philosophical stuff was brilliant. And then now there's some disappointing losses. Do you feel like players take advantage of your demeanor?
I don't think so. I think, I think it's all tied together. I think if I was to be just, maybe F-bombs and short fuse and all that, what that would really mean is probably, number one, it's all about me.
Right.
I don't really, all the other guys are here just to serve me and get my stuff done. That'd be one. Two would be, there'd be a culture on the staff of I wonder what Dave's going to be like today. Yep. Is it going to be a good day? Is
up
it going
and
to
down
be a bad day?
Yeah.
And then you just have there's more to that too. And then you just have all of the kind of the trails off of that. And so, the accountability, I do not believe has been an issue. I think it's been more of, hey, coach has talked about this. This is something that we've spent time on, and we're still struggling to do it, right? And whether that's stay together and not abandon technique, whether that's get our grades up and our GPA and our class attendance to what it should be. I think just those things I can lead with and help and nudge and guide with. Really, we've got to get our guys to make that choice to do it. And when they do, it's just crazy how stuff comes to them. And so, like I say, there's been guys that has happened, probably not enough.
In 2020, you were amazingly loyal to Charlie Brewer, and then eventually he left. Mm-hmm. And then last year you had the great situation with Gary, and then Shapen comes in and does well. You made the decision in April or whatever it was about Blake being QB1 and Gary moved on. When you made that decision, it appeared as if your offense would be much more dynamic. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't it been dynamic in the passing game, or did you ever think about going to Kyron just to change it up on Saturday night?
No, I appreciate that. I would say, these last couple weeks offensively, we've been productive. I think passing game wise have probably been okay the last couple games. I think previous to that, when the run game was probably not what it needed to be, I thought the passing game was pretty strong. And so I think going into this pass game, it'd be great if we could do all of these things at one time. It's about time to do this. And so I'm sure that pressure was being felt by him, and just by watching him play on Saturday, that's what was speaking to me. Is that here he is, here's Blake trying to press this or force this or trying to make this happen and all of it. So I think with all that, I got to look at myself first, and I got to look at the environment and if there's anything I did there to get that. Because, we're up here yesterday and we're watching, putting the game to bed and going through all of it, and we have family dinner, so our families come up and with the staff, and so we're seeing them and trying to have a break from it. And out of the quarterback room, Blake comes out, and he's got all the young receivers in there. And they're all watching the game. They've been in there for like 3 hours, you know. And so I think so much of it too is that you know, he goes really, and he's tied to the hip with them. And so like their improvements, their growth, their trust in, hey, if there's a hitch and it's run at 4, we can't be running a hitch at 8. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's happened. And so I think things like, I think the whole thing, you wish it was kind of a one-stop shop, and it just hasn't been. And I think one of the more consistent things in the throw game probably has been Blake. And so, you know, we got all the faith in him, and we're looking forward to this next one. We're gonna, you know, we got hit with a lot of man pressure in this last game. I would not be surprised if that's all we see in this next one.
So do you already start looking at red shirts? Have you already made up some of those decisions? You don't have to get into specific players if you can't, and is that something that you may lose because you can't win a Big 12 title? Mm-hmm. Do you start to maybe make decisions on who maybe plays down the stretch based on satisfying them and not wanting them to go anywhere else?
Appreciate that. Not so much with that in mind. I think it's more of what can help us win. And so whether if it's a special teams, addition, or if it is a, hey, this particular piece on defense, a guy that can cover a slot but also play a half in this third down role, maybe that's somebody that's in that criteria. Or maybe it's, hey, it is a third down blitz package and we need someone that can beat a back one-on-one. It could be that. And so that is always in discussion, and that's really being talked about right now.
Last week there was a lot of talk about the attendance. Do you as a coach care about whether the fans show up for a game, is a sellout, what uniforms you wear, anything like that ever get inside your bubble?
No, but I think I did notice the athletic staff really make a push. I'm seeing stuff pop up of our baseball coach saying go to the football game. Yeah. And I'm seeing all that, and it's like it makes you feel a part of, and it makes you feel like there's support, and it makes you feel like I think really, dude, it's way bigger than you, and so that's always good to feel that. And so but then I think I would start to feel it, what the players are feeling some on Friday, just with that, hey, it looks like it's going to be a good crowd, or the kids are saying, hey, I've got however many people coming. And I know for them it matters, the energy for that. And especially when we're on the road and we're in these environments and they have to kind of quiet the crowd with execution. They know what it's like on the other side. And so for them to be in environments where it's that to our advantage, I know that's something that hits them for sure.
The fan base came to the game, no doubt, and it started building around Tuesday or Wednesday, and whether they wanted a blackout or whatever, and they were there. Mm-hmm. And it's like you guys blew a tire. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that in your presser, but is that like a missed moment right there?
There's no doubt about it. Yeah, you feel that, and it's kind of it's just so. I'm just so disappointed in myself, really, and so it's hard. It's hard medicine to take.
Disappointed in yourself. You say that a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'd asked you that in the press conference last week. Not a lot of head coaches ever admit that, Dave. You don't have a problem with admitting it. Is that because that's, obviously you're a guy that's going to tell the truth, but is that ever something that maybe affects the leadership of the team? Or does it actually strengthen your leadership in the team?
I would say, first of all, I think telling the truth has always been something I aspire to do. I think it's hard to do. I think difficult conversations are never always get your stomach going and all of it, and you'd rather not have them. But I think when people that you're with every day see you and they know, and then when you open your mouth and you talk, and it's like, that's not what I saw, or that's not what I experienced, or that's not what, I was there, then I think the integrity erodes, And so I think when you own it, and what you first, I guess, probably before any of that, is that, hey, ain't no one perfect, and ain't no one trying to be perfect, and ain't no one here have all the answers. That's got to be first. And so if anyone's saying any of that, then that's just someone's ego talking, I think that would be probably the foundational thing. And so that I think when you go up you walk up those levels and you get to where you're in front of the team and you're saying what you say, I think what that enables me to do now is if I can tell the truth of myself, I can tell the truth on everything, whether it's an assistant coach, or it's a game plan, or it's a player, or it's this type of attitude on the sideline, or it's, and then I think it's just so much easier to deal with reality when you can realistically talk about it.
What would you describe this year? 6-4 bowl team, been some challenges. How would you describe this season based on the expectations, and then also what you actually can get?
Yeah, I think it's been probably framed by expectations, and I think unfortunately, and I think there's been a lot of growth with the team. I think there's been improvements. I think there's been areas that the team has matured in spots that they didn't even know they needed maturing on. And then I think there's blind spots that we had that we didn't even know we had. And so I think that discovery of the whole thing throughout is probably my biggest takeaway. But I think there's an opportunity to finish really strong with this one. And I think there's another great opportunity right after that. And so, kind of mentioned it before, is that the response is going to be the biggest thing. Like, how we respond is really going to be, especially after just the dud of this last one, is really going to be kind of what is the heart and soul of the team.
Dave Aranda, Baylor football coach, 365 Sports. What is going to be the heart and soul of the team? I hope I asked what most of you would want to know. He didn't obviously get to some of what you maybe wanted to know. But how they respond, that's TCU, number 4 in the country, Fox Saturday, etc., will be a point of what is the heart and soul of this team. And if you didn't know who they were in week 7 or 10 or 11, then how do you know what they might be on Saturday?
I'll tell you, if they need motivation, it's simply, this is your biggest rival who right now is going to go to the CFP. Unless you beat them, then you could kind of ruin their season. If that matters to you as a player or a fan. It mattered to TCU
last year.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yep.
So, pay back the favor and maybe put them into a tailspin for a little bit. But, yeah, they've got to – and it's not just about motivation. I mean, that's a huge thing with this team. They are just – this is a team that is not devoid of chemistry, but it's like they just have a meter that they have not been able to fill to the top every single week. It just – they're very disjointed, and it doesn't make any sense.
This team is frustrating as all get out to watch and try to predict. I don't know what to expect this weekend. On the one hand, yeah, it's unbeaten TCU. It's Big 12 rivalry. It's just historic rivalry. It's a lot of different things, but that's outside noise, right? It's distractions or whatever. And I'm sure Aranda's referring to something deeper than that when he talks about distractions, but, that's what K-State got up for. That's what TCU would get up for. If the shoe was on the other foot and unbeaten Baylor 2 games away from a perfect regular season and 3 games away from playing in the college football playoff was rolling into Fort Worth against an average TCU team, what do y'all think happens?
Yeah.
TCU probably kicks their head in, right, based on recent history. And yet here's Baylor in that situation, and I don't know what to think. They could get beat by 60. They could win by 15. I really have no idea. I know they're good enough to win most of the games they played. I also know that they are, poor enough when it comes to certain details or just self-inflicted wounds that they are, bad enough at times to be 500 and perhaps even worse than that in some games. But yeah, it's going to be curious to see here in a few days of what the kind of temperature gauge is because I mean, if he can't figure it out, how are we going to know? If Dave Aranda doesn't know, how does the average fan know, or media person, or whoever? I mean, that's a tough puzzle to solve this year. And, I just hate it for the guys involved, the ones that maybe aren't in and out or kind of in that middle ground, because, you look up and I don't think you realize, like, the season's over, guys. Like, the season's almost over. And so, all this time that you took 10 weeks figuring it out for some people, he's right. Like, he's got to look bigger picture. He's more worried about a guy figuring it out in life than he is figuring it out to help him win a couple of football games ultimately. But my gosh, what a wasted opportunity that I think if they're not careful, they're going to look back on and realize all of the talent and potential that they had leading into this season and how they squandered a lot of it because they just simply couldn't get on track, and that'd be a real shame.
It would be a terrible shame. And did you hear what he said when I mentioned how do you kind of summarize who you are right now at 6-4 based on expectations? And he said, yeah, expectations kind of set that tone. If you want to be who you were last year and who you were in 13 or 14 or who you were in 19, or if you want to be consistently respected, you have to be able to understand if you're not the hunter and you are the hunted, that it's different. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way. There's no doubt if Baylor was unbeaten like TCU this week and going into Fort Worth, TCU would beat the Bears, and probably in ways soundly.
Yeah, and he talks about the outside noise and the expectations and all that. Like, that's just part of the deal, Coach Aranda. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but, you're never going to have control over how we talk about games or how the fans talk about games. Like, I know he'd rather not have a blackout or prime time or build up for what happened last year. But guess what? K-State was pointing back to Will Howard's showing 2 years ago as motivation for this game. So, like, those don't have to be distractions. I think
so. Brigham Young had motivation. Oklahoma State had motivation.
Yeah. But that's a distraction because you're focusing too much. No, that's motivation, if anything. And I think that's where I do have a disconnect somewhat. I know he's not referring to it that black and white, but sometimes, those aren't distractions. It's something you just got to use as fuel.
He is the athletic director at Iowa State. Jamie Pollard also serves in the men's basketball committee. He has been a major part of the Big 12 and where they have been the last couple of years and where they are now. And Jamie Pollard, Iowa State AD, joins us on 365 Sports. Paul, Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Jamie, thanks for your time. We appreciate you as always. Your thoughts about the new TV deal that has not yet been officially announced. We've had Mack Rhodes on to discuss it. You on now, Gene Taylor. We've had Brett Yormark on it. Did you think they would be, or you would be in this position even 18 or 24 months ago?
No way. There's nobody that would have anticipated we'd be in as good a spot as we're in right now. And hopefully they all said the same thing.
They did.
They kind of did. Yeah. They didn't. They weren't beating around the bush. There's no question they did.
Yeah, Mac probably told you he knew, but, he'd be blowing smoke at you.
Some people think he does that to us on Tuesdays when he's on the show.
Jamie, this is so huge for the schools in the Big 12. One of the things the Big 12 probably has not done over its history as well as its counterparts in, say, the SEC or the Big 10 is sell the brand. Now, the SEC has a bunch of national titles that kind of sell themselves, but as far as selling the brand and making people really believe that the brand of football, especially that they're going to get, is good, is kind of fallen by the wayside. Will this new TV deal allow that to finally happen? And it's coming on the heels of a great football season.
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, I think one of the things that we all learned through this process is just what our real value was. And we had been led to believe without Texas and OU that we were something less than what reality ended up being. And what was really eye-opening to me is the firm that Commissioner Yormark used, Endeavor, had a gentleman named Mark Shapiro that heads that up, and he used to run ESPN. And when I had seen him speak before, but never had been in a room where he was like representing us. And one of the things that he shared with us was, and it made total sense, was, if you're on ABC or you're on Big Fox, your floor for what the eyeballs watching you is at such a high level. And if you're on ESPN2 or FSN1, you're automatically going to be at a lower number. And so what was happening is when those when ESPN and Fox were choosing Texas and OU for ABC or for the Fox game, that was artificially not only making their numbers higher, but it was artificially making our numbers lower. And so when you take them out of the equation and you get an Oklahoma State Baylor Big 12 championship game last year, all of a sudden you see our numbers are just as good. And so to me, what I think this is going to allow is there's going to be so many more eyeballs that are going to be on Big 12 football in the new television package that we will all benefit from that in a significant way.
Jamie, how important was that campus visit, do you think, for Commissioner Yormark, just to go around for each school? And because I remember talking to him at Big 12 Media Days, and here he is. He's like kind of the slick New Yorker, you know, and you're thinking of the Big 12 kind of the way that it's always been, and it doesn't really seem to fit. And, you know, now he's gone around kind of seeing the lay of the land. How important do you think that was?
Well, what's the old saying? Country gone to city? Yeah. You know, country gone to town? Well, it was a little different. Brooklyn came to Ames.
Yeah.
So it was, I think, very beneficial for the commissioner because I think what it did, you know, his whole background has been on the sponsorship side in big television markets, you know, the NBA, both with the Rock Nation. And for him to come see, you know, just a college campus, I think he was really surprised at the facilities that all of us have, that the extensive offerings that we provide, not just to football, but to all, you know, in our case, 450 student athletes. And I think that was really helpful for him to kind of level set, you know, what he's doing all this for.
Jamie, you mentioned Mark Shapiro. Today, the Big 12 came out with that business advisory board, and there are some what I call bangers, like elite alphas, including Mark Shapiro. Is that just another thing that is like opening up the eyes to the Big 12 and everyone that there is so much more out there to get and not just talk it, but get new ideas for this conference?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it has several, probably has several goals from it. But one is to tap into some of the brightest minds about, you know, as we move this conference forward, you know, if we're just going to do what has always been done, then we're probably going to get what's always been done results. And if you want to do new things and get big television contracts that no one thought you could get, then, you know, you've got to think differently. And you are who you associate with. And so to have some of those, you know, really what I'd call marquee CEOs or executives can only strengthen what we all do.
In fact, Garth Brooks, Jason Kidd are on this list along, and they're businessmen too, but also many others, as I mentioned. Paul Foster, of course, people know him from Baylor as well. Jamie Pollard, Director of Athletics at Iowa State, with us on 365 Sports.
Jamie, when you mentioned a second ago when you were, you know, hearing from the TV people, like you were this with Texas and Oklahoma, you are this without them, and then you guys didn't have any way to kind of see that. Was that kind of a liberating feeling, or did you ever have that sneaking suspicion of that, or was it just conditioned in the members of the Big 12 that this is who you are and this is who you'll always be?
No, I don't think anybody at the table had that. Yeah. I think we all had a higher aspirations, higher vision of what we thought we were, but it just had never been confirmed by anybody. And so liberating might be the best way to describe it, that it was just nice to finally have some confirmation. You know, I love a saying Coach Rhodes has or Coach Campbell has right now. That is, we are going to either confirm who we are or we're going to transform who we are. And, you know, what just happened in the Big 12 is we transformed the image of what the remaining 12 schools are going to be. And we didn't confirm, because confirming would have been, we would have gotten 25% less and everyone would have said, see, I told you. And what we did is we just transformed it. And I think that's so neat. And so it gives just a lot of hope and I think opportunity for us to continue to build upon that. And that's where I think Commissioner Yormark is really trying to capitalize.
Jamie, Matt Campbell, obviously a coach that has done a great job at Iowa State, but it's been a tough year. You've had a lot of close losses, frustrating losses, another one this past weekend. He was the hot commodity. He probably is still there. You have been able to, of course, have him on your team or your roster in athletic department. Where is that right now as far as him trying to get through what has been kind of just a difficult season?
Well, we'll go to great lengths to keep him. And apparently, I went to great lengths here by saying, could we maybe not have as good a year? So we get a year off from everybody wanting you. That's commitment, isn't it?
Yes.
No, we've talked about this. I mean, yes, things haven't gone the way we'd like. But, since Coach Campbell has been here, if we go back to his very first year, I remember we lost to Iowa 42-3 in his second game as the head coach. And since that game, there's not been one game in his 6 years where we haven't been in the game in the fourth quarter. And this year, unfortunately, we've come up on the short end of them all. And what I'd like to say is, because for a while there, we had, I think when we lost the first 4 games, it was by a total of 14 points. And we could, so people are going, we could just as easily be 7-0. And what I said is, yeah, but when we're 7-0, everyone would think we were better than we are. And we're 14 points from being 3-4. So, there's 2 ways of looking at all of this, and winning is just hard. It's just hard. And we're a young team. I mean, our defense is, probably the best defense we've ever had in the history of Iowa State statistically. I think we're 6th or 7th in the country right now. But unfortunately on offense, we just haven't been able to put it together. And as a result, you're in a lot of close games, but hasn't gone our way. And you like to think that a lot of these hard knocks will pay off sometime, in the future. That future may be next year. But look at TCU. Last year, TCU, didn't get, no one saw this coming on TCU side of things, right? So, all the bruises and hard knocks they took last year, it's kind of all flipped around. And unfortunately, that's sport. Sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it's not. And right now it's not for us.
You are on the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee, which is a powerful committee and, of course, a part of revenue when it comes to college athletics. There has been at least if you read the articles or see things that the college men's basketball tournament might expand again. Is that legitimate?
Well, what happened is the council came out with this 25%, the number of schools participating, and we should try to have the tournaments all be around 25%. But that's cookie cutter. The men's basketball tournament is, it's the cowbell for the NCAA. It's where all the money comes from. It's the best thing we've got going for us as an NCAA. And, to go to 96, that some people think, because that's the 25% threshold, probably isn't even on anybody's radar. Not really a realistic number. It doesn't really work with just how things work with television. Could there be some expansion? There could. You could probably expand into the play-in games on the, what they do in Dayton and probably add maybe 4 to 8 more teams and not really change the tournament because those teams could then play in Friday, Sunday. But it's still in its infancy. And, anybody that thinks it's so far down the pike doesn't really know what's going on because it's not. We don't, it's not broken, and we certainly don't want to tinker with something that's a cash cow for the NCAA.
Yeah, it's like walking into the Louvre and seeing the Mona Lisa and go, she'd look good with sunglasses. You don't want to do that.
Well,
go ahead.
And on top of it, the Big 12, we're the best basketball conference in the country, hands down. Statistically, there's no, a close second. There isn't. And Baylor's been a big part of that. And, I take great pride in serving on this committee on behalf of the Big 12, because both what the NCAA tournament means to the NCAA and what basketball means to the Big 12.
Jamie, we have a good friend, Adam, who is an Iowa State alum and the biggest Iowa State fan I think I've ever met or will ever meet in my life. And he asked this question: has the Big 12 considered a college basketball showcase on Saturdays in conference where all the home teams each Saturday would host men's and women's doubleheaders against the same school? So if fans wanted to travel from the opposition school or home fans spend the day and experience and take in both games so they could do so, for example, go to Town there and between games and have lunch and shop and experience that at Ames or wherever they might be?
Well, I mean, flat out, the answer is no. I haven't heard that idea come up before. Not saying it's not a good idea. You know, just off the top of my head, one of the challenges is television feeds the beast that we all call college athletics. And so trying to do what he just said, there's probably not enough TV windows to fit all those games in exactly like he said, you know, and so that one makes something like that probably a little more challenging than what might feel like if you're just writing it out on the back of a napkin. You got to fill all those television windows and continue to help, you know, our partners that pay a lot of money to make our league be as broadcasted as it is, you know, and I don't know if you could pull that off. Now, I will say this. You know, as an NCAA tournament committee member, the challenge we do at the SEC is the challenge that's probably the most respected and the most appreciated by the men's basketball committee. And it's simply because when we play it on that Saturday, you know, in late January, early February, when you already kind of have a sense of what are the good teams in each league. And so you get some great marquee matchups where you get to compare good teams from the SEC against the Big 12 team, which is vastly different than the challenge games we do in December when nobody really knows yet what you have.
Jamie, you look inside the Big 12, you and where your role is. Gene Taylor's on the college football committee. Mac is on some committees. Obviously, Dr. Livingstone very much in the transformational committee. E. Gordon Gee has been in these committees. Do you feel like that a lot of you have not more respect because people respect you, but even more of a say? Does it get larger now that the conference changes without Texas and OU in the future?
Well, that's a great question, and you know, only time will tell that, right? But you know, what I do know is this: we have some really hardworking, or I have some hardworking colleagues, whether they're presidents, whether they're ADs, whether they're our senior women's administrators, our coaches, our faculty athletic reps, that really care about the Big 12. And several of us have been through, you know, some really tough peaks and valleys over the years of, you know, is this league going to stay together? And, you know, that's to me as the probably, I guess I'm the dean of the sustaining ADs, that it matters to me, you know, because my professional career as an athletics director has been tied to this league. And it matters to me that our league gets the respect I know it deserves, because we represent a lot of really talented student athletes and fan bases that are very rabid about sports. You know, and that's one of the neat things I love about the Big 12 is, you know, you're not going to find empty stadiums and empty arenas when you go on the road. And that, I think, is also what makes this league really special and gets us some clout at the national level.
How good is the Big 12 men's basketball conference, and how much better will it get actually when you have others like Houston, Cincinnati? UCF, of course, is trying to get to a level, and, of course, Brigham Young has a beautiful arena. How strong is that about to be, if not already?
Oh, my. I mean, both men and women. But it is, you know, you look and go, how can it get any tougher? It's going to get tougher, you know, and so, but that's what makes it what it is. You know, when I think of the Big 12 tournament, you know, in Kansas City, I've said to our folks, because I know the Southern schools maybe go, oh, it becomes a home game for KU or Iowa State or K-State. But you watch the BYU, they will help fill that arena. I mean, the BYU folks are rabid about their programs. And so, yeah, this league is going to be a tough out. I mean, can't imagine having to go on the road to Cincinnati or to Houston or to BYU or to Central Florida on top of having to go to Baylor and, you know, to KU and K-State. So, yeah, but that's what we do it for.
Jamie, I had somebody on the chat room. We have a chat room going on. You don't have a baseball program. Is that something that is just not going to change, or is that ever going to be something in the future that you look at?
Well, no, I'm a baseball junkie. I'm a huge Milwaukee Brewers fan, but I don't see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
In this day and age, we're having a hard enough time figuring out how we're going to feed the mouths we already have to feed. And
right.
To add another sport is just pretty daunting. Secondly, for us as a northern school, adding baseball where, quite frankly, most of my colleagues have quasi minor league ballparks and stadiums and programs makes it really tough to compete when you're in the north. And not to say you can't, but when all the schools you're going to compete with in your league are pretty much playing in a different sandbox, that makes it tough.
Yeah, that's a great answer as well.
I'd say the southern schools need to add wrestling.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great response.
It's inside. You're never wrestling outside in the snow.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, hey, I tell you what, as rabid as your fans are for baseball, you come when we wrestle Iowa or we wrestle Okie State. You come up to Ames, Iowa, and I guarantee you'll have a wild time.
One of my favorite experiences is I went actually with the Baylor charter to a basketball game in Ames at Hilton Coliseum, and I was blown away by the atmosphere. It was phenomenal. My last question, and we asked you this if you don't mind. You shared your story about your health and battling cancer. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm coming up on a year here, so I have my next scan in December. It was Thanksgiving a year ago that I had the surgery, so hopefully my first 2 scans, the first 2 3-month scans were all good. So I feel good. So hopefully December will be, just a layup. And if that's the case, then, I'm a year into it, and that's a good benchmark to get to. So
appreciate that. The inspiration, Jamie. Thanks for your time. As far as your leadership, Iowa State Athletic Director, again, Jamie Pollard, we appreciate your time.
All right, guys. Thank you for having me on.
You're more than welcome. Jamie Pollard with us on 365 Sports. When we come back, we're not done. We have a lot to get to. Ricky Thompson, former Baylor wide receiver, sideline reporter for Baylor Radio, will join us at the top of the hour. We still need to dig into a few more of the top 25. We've mentioned TCU, K-State up in the top 20 after their big win in Waco, but also look at the national picture elsewhere. That and more. This is 365 Sports. This month, Allen Samuels having Black Friday sales event. You can save big on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab with total values up to $4,250 with an extra $500 if you want to any of the first responders if that's what you do for a living. And on top of that, 2.9% financing for 72 months. So the Ram 1500 Crew Cab, total values up to $4,250 with 2.9% financing for 72 months. And again, $500 off for anyone who is a first responder, and God bless you for doing that. No payments until January 2023. Shop an award-winning dealership. Ask AJ if you can find him or any of the client managers who can walk you through the process like they did with me, and I have always loved that decision I made to get on their lot. Loop 340 east of 84, General Manager Ted Teague. Come by. Let's be friends.
Make a winning drive to Genco and refinance your vehicle. Every loan can skip monthly payments for 90 days with rates as low as 3.75% APR for 48 months. Right now is the time to make a play. At Genco, we save you money by helping you pay less for your car. Every loan scores no payments for 90 days. Then have a chance to win 3 more months of no payments. Apply online today for an additional discount of 0.15% off our already low rates, subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. For more information, go to GencoFCU.org. Member NCUA.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
Did you know Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco is open to the public? Next time you're in town for a Baylor athletic event or you're in town for tourism, take advantage of their day passes for $10 a piece or the weekend for $30. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers 40 group exercise classes, including indoor cycling and yoga, boot camp, and bar. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines, and a spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alec Botch, where you will be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, kids club, 16 tennis courts, and 8 pickleball courts, and youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons available. Waco's premier experience where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit wacotennis.com or visit them next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
Here we go, 365 Sports. The national picture, and a little after 5, Ricky Thompson will join us. The national picture, LSU survived Fayetteville, found a way. USC, we knew that Friday night, blew out a bad Colorado team. Bama, nice bounce-back win for them. NC State, Texas, Liberty, Illinois, and Kentucky were all knocked out of either one or both of the top 25s. And then how about UCF? How about North Carolina? How about Washington, Kansas State? Those seem to be the ones that probably improved who they were, at least in the overall picture of the top 20, top 15, or top 10.
Yeah, Washington only has 2 losses on the year. They're right. I mean, the Pac-12, it could be a legitimate mess after this week. If UCLA beats USC, you'll have a bunch of teams that are all 9-2. If everybody wins, you'll have a bunch of teams that are 9-2 heading into the last week of the season. So they went to their top 2 teams this year, right, for the championship. So, yeah, it could be a little bit of a mess going into the last week in the Pac-12. With USC, I guess if they won, they would solidify their spot in the championship game because they end with Notre Dame, which is going to be tough. And they could conceivably sneak into the CFP if they went out. But, again, I mean, UCLA laid an egg to Arizona this week and lost, so that throws all that into question. So yeah, I think there's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Utah and Oregon, UCLA and UCLA and USC this weekend. Craig?
It's was a fun weekend. I don't really know where to start with all those games, but yeah, the Pac-12's tightening up and making for some good games. Although they probably knocked themselves out of the playoff potentially as a result of how good the top is and how little separation there is. But I'm very curious to see both of those games this weekend. And Oregon, it was there for the taking. I think that even with that blowout loss to Georgia, that if they had kept on their path and they were a really good shot to maybe get into that playoff. But obviously that's kaput now with the Washington loss. So, it's shaping up to be a fun little stretch run here for the Pac-12.
By the way, tonight at the Farrell Center, Baylor, the number 5 ranked team in the country in men's basketball, hosting Northern Colorado. And Adam Flagler was named the Big 12 Player of the Week from the first week of the college basketball season. Now, not sure if you saw this or not, Dan Wolken from USA Today has a misery index. A&M was at the top of it. Here are some things he said about Baylor after the loss to Kansas State. There should be no hangover when you beat the worst Oklahoma team in the last 20 years, but there was for the Bears who followed the win in Norman with a belly flop at home against Kansas State. He went on. Baylor was never in the game at any point, dropping a disappointing 6-4 in the season, where it looked like on paper it should have contended for another Big 12 title. In the big picture, it was perhaps a mistake for Coach Dave Aranda to put all of his chips on the quarterback and Blake Shapen. Just hasn't been good enough this year and threw 2 picks against the Wildcats. And then this one. But at the same time, why did Baylor have thousands of empty seats against the top 25 team when it needed an alum to buy thousands of tickets to sell out, which we found out was about 3,000? And this is a question, and I've seen some back and forth on this, and it's true serum. There are some fantastic fans, a bunch of great fans, and then there's some that kind of, like everybody, kind of up and down based on how the wind blows and maybe if you're good or not, and I get that. It's with a lot of people, but this is the one that is, I think, a great question. Are Baylor fans content with being an intermittent contender, or do they want to be a perennial Big 12 powerhouse? I think they want that. I think the athletic administration, I think the coaches, I think a lot of fans want it, but that's the misery index with Baylor.
So at their best, pre-Bryles, they were an intermittent contender. So the root of many Baylor fans.
Pre-Bryles?
Like before the pre-Bryles.
Okay.
Pre-Bryles.
Okay.
In the Grant Taff era. So a lot of the Baylor fans who are between, like, until about 1989, 90, that grew up in that era, were used to being an intermittent contender. So in their very DNA as fans, that's what they're used to. It doesn't change even with the success they've had in the last 15 years or 10 years or so. So I think part of the problem is that, and Baylor's not the only school who has this issue, but I do think when you look around the schools that go, look, Nebraska still goes to games. In spite
they had to have a donor or two, though, kind of keep that streak alive.
But for the most part, they still go to games in spite of.
They wouldn't need to if they were competing for Big 12, Big 10 championships.
But they still pretty much go because it's ingrained in their DNA growing up that what do you do on Saturday in September, October, and November? Well, when the Huskers are at home, you go. That is not what has been ingrained in the DNA of these fans, and they need to start ingraining it now because they just have so many conditions on whether they'll go to a game or not, the time, the weather, the freaking shirts that everybody's going to wear, all that stuff. It just needs to be, it's Saturday, they're at home, you go. That's got to be the feeling in your soul as a fan. Otherwise, you're going to keep contending with all these issues.
They have a lot of those fans that's just a matter of how much do you have to dip into that pool. Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I could go a few different ways with this. Though we'll, I guess, just start off by saying, like, yeah, attendance is an issue at some places across the country as well. But I'd be curious to know if how many of those have had the type of success that Baylor has had. Now, granted, I know that somebody will pop up and say, but we've also been through so much. But, like, I get it. You love carrying that cross. Like, you love to talk about how you carry that cross and how much you've been through and all that. I am sick of hearing about it. I don't care anymore. It's hard. To be a fan sometimes, I get that. It's expensive to be a fan. It's all those different types of things. So if I'm talking about somebody who can't afford to go, then I'm not talking about you. But I do think that there are enough people in the fan base where you don't have to buy 3,000 tickets for a top 25 opponent when there's a Big 12 championship spot on the line. I don't think that's crazy to think that. So if you're somebody that can't be there because you have a medical issue, clearly not talking about you. You can't afford it. Clearly not talking about you. But if you can, and you're deciding you're not going because, well, the AD was mean to me, or the assistant AD was mean on the radio, which was not even true, and that's all in your imagination, or whatever bogus excuse you want to make to then go and like pan something else that you don't like or you're upset about. I'm over all of that. I'm not going to try and sit here and rally the troops anymore. There's a lot of people that were taking victory laps for the turnout on Saturday, and I commend all the people that turned out on Saturday. It was great that there was a blackout. I didn't care about the blackout. Like, that was not ever in any way something that was designed for me anyways, but clearly a lot of people were into it. So, hey, it worked out well. That's great. But, to have that crowd show up and have the football team not perform well at all was massively disappointing. But I don't think you all of a sudden have the right to sit there and talk about like how you are owed something, or, well, we showed up and we weren't given what we want, so I'm not showing up anymore. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Other than it's just frustrating to see the amount of effort that it takes to have to just do something that you think for most fan bases would be pretty simple. Hey, we've got a really good team coming in. It's a Saturday night game. Show up and show out and yell. And people take you saying show up as like an insult. And it's like, if we're starting there, then, you bog down in like what people are wearing, and then you it's just a lot of just nonsense to me. So again, if you're somebody that can't go because you have a legitimate reason, fine. But if you're somebody that's not going because it's not the right color t-shirt, or the weather's wrong, like Paul said, or the kickoff time's not good enough, like, I'm just over it. I'm tired of hearing about it. They don't have that problem in a lot of other places. And if that's just the reality of where this place is, then, the unfortunate part of it is like all those hardcore fans, I commend them. I'm definitely not calling out the fan base, because I know somebody's already going to try and spin it that way. Like they spun Joe Vaughn's comments, like they spun Mac Rhodes' comments. I know that's probably coming, but it's just such a battle, man. And I'm tired of talking about it year after year after year, because it's not changing all that much. And I commend those who are trying to change it. But yeah, there's a lot of old fuddy-duddies who are just very stuck in the mud and very angry at everything, and very spoiled in a lot of ways too. And, I'm just not going to spend much energy on those folks.
Yeah, I've done many conversations about the attendance, and I've learned that I'm beating my head against the wall, and I get that there's a lot of reasons. Bottom line is, go into your soul. By the way, Dave Aranda is embarrassed by how his team played Saturday night. He knows they missed an opportunity. Go back and listen to the end of my one-on-one with him. Everyone knows that they absolutely blew a tire. Then Baylor is kind of, not always, but there was times when they would show up for a big men's game and they would lose to KU 10, 15 years ago. Now they win those games, a lot of them. Or Texas or whoever. So it's over. So there's me, a lot of you that put everything you had into that game as far as what you wore, and if you spent money, and I get it, and you're going to go, screw them, they lost. I don't blame you for that. But that's not how you act if you're a true blue blood, or you want to be, and I'm not saying Baylor is, type of rabid fan base. You go again. And if they get beat 50-7 by TCU, you go again next year.
Yeah, and you don't have to have a sellout streak. I mean, you don't, but I think the fight for support is just. Am I wrong? Does it just feel like it's such a struggle sometimes? Yeah. And it's not like it's like, and we're talking about a team that's bowl eligible and was in the hunt for a Big 12 title with a top 25 opponent coming in and a 3-game win streak. And you're having to like convince people to show up. And the only way you can convince them is
coming off a Big 12 championship and Sugar Bowl.
Yes, coming off of the most successful season in history. And it's like one thing goes wrong and it's like, Dave Aranda's not the guy. I'm not showing up anymore. And it's just like, man, I don't know. Like, I'm just not even going to try to fight that fight, because that to me is just, I don't even know how to describe it. And I do think like, if that's the way you want to be, like I said, if you're massively supportive, don't hit me with the post about how much you donate. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the fickle folks out there that think that they only should show up if the team's unbeaten and wearing what they want to every Saturday, which is the minority. But it was such a struggle last week, and now they lose a game, and granted, they lose badly. And you're right. Like, if you have a game like that, you have to win that game, or you at least have to put on a showing to bring people back. Like, you have to do your job as well. So this is not all on the fans. This is also on the terrible performance. And that's why Dave Aranda, I think, probably feels bad, is because he knows they're going to have to work really hard to drum up an audience like that again. And the fact that a week later, even though you lost, and yes, you lost embarrassingly, is instead of people going like, well, at least TCU's coming to town, you get fired back up, big noon kickoffs coming to town, which is surprising, but hey, here they are. And there's a ton of stuff to play for despite that loss. And instead of it going like, man, we're really lucky that we're getting all this and this other opportunity, even though we quite frankly don't really deserve it after last week. And it's like, man, the crowd's going to suck. Nobody's going to be there. There's going to be, and it's just like, that's just depressing to me. That's depressing to me.
And I see a lot that maybe TCU will have a big crowd. They have their own problems when they're at Amon Carter, but they are going to travel well. But
they're unbeaten in the playoff hunt. Of course they're going to travel well. Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah,
by the way, the fan base did their job last week.
They did.
They got a promotion going. They almost built it from scratch. The athletic department finally kind of said, "Hey, we need to kind of let this thing go too." And that was an incredible setting and atmosphere. And poop, but it was gone.
You can't just take it away, because then what you're saying is not even to the university, they've heard it all, but to the team that really needs to see it. Hey, you guys, our love is very conditional.
Yes,
it
exactly.
Is very conditional.
That's the proper way to put it. Yeah.
And so as opposed to we're with you, ride or die, we're thick and thin. We are only with you thick. We are not with you thin.
Exactly.
We earned if we come, we earn a win. And I get. Garrett, do you have the Snacks Lorando Johnson tweet? All right, this is interesting here. So Snacks, a good player, young player. Nobody got our back but us. That's the young man who plays for Baylor. And I'm sure that, they got beat up a lot for what happened on Saturday night, and probably deservedly so. You don't want to get personal, but I get it. The responses to that over and over and over again was, no, I'm going to be there next Saturday. I'll be there Saturday. So we'll see on Saturday, 11 o'clock, against the number 4 ranked unbeaten Frogs at McLean Stadium.
I know we got to go, but
yes.
This is not a shot at you if you showed up in support of the team and all that, but it's just the fickle nature of like you're owed something because you bought a ticket. Yeah, I mean, we'd all like to see the team that we bought a ticket to go see win every game that we show up for and to have everything be perfect, but that's just not the way that it is, and I just think that it's a bit alarming that the I guess response is, we're not going to show up next week when unbeaten TCU, our arch rival who kicks our ass every year, rolls into town. That's the exact opposite response. That's not sending a message to Mac Rhodes when the axe you have to grind, or anybody else that you are mad at because they don't do things the way that it's always done beforehand for the last 50 years. That's sending a message, like Paul said, and not a good one to the team. And it also just doesn't look very good. So if anything, you're not sending a message that you think you are. You're actually doing more harm than good. And I don't think enough people realize that, or maybe they're too stubborn to realize that, but that's the few and far between, and those are the folks that we're talking about.
But thank you to all of you who showed up and were loud and you were ready and you were in black or whatever you were wearing, because that place was lit up and ready to go, and then the match was lit, and then all of a sudden it had a big wet blanket put on it, and that's unfortunate. Dave Aranda knows it, Mac Rhodes knows it, all of them know it, and we'll see what happens Saturday, 11 o'clock, against a hell of a team out of Fort Worth. Coming up, Ricky Thompson will get his feedback. Baylor Radio Sideline Reporter. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, the people that you can count on for the life of your vehicle, for a great deal, and for great customer service as well. I went over there. Can hear you guys, by the way. Donnie is a great person over there. You can see usually at his desk there when you first walk into the repair shop, and got a crowd of folks in there that are answering phones, that are working with folks, and right there in front of you, and you walk into the repair part, you see right in front of your face the great customer service and the great team of folks over at Richard Carr. But they can also, in the repair shop, do a great job on your vehicle when you need repairs. Like for myself, for example, I had a couple of different accidents over the last year. Richard Carr was a place that I went and got all fixed up. So from their repair to their customer service to being the people that you can count on, I can vouch for them in every way, shape, or form, and we'll definitely be back. And that will be the place I look to when I buy a new car, hopefully not in the near future, but eventually. But for those that are in the market right now, the wait's over. They've got trucks, SUVs all over the lot. 2022 Sierras, Acadias, Terrains from GMC are waiting for you to test drive today. They've got Cadillac XT4 and XT5 SUVs
SUVs. They've got the Sierra, as I mentioned, that, for example, has the following to offer: best-in-class towing, strong steel bed, multi-pro tailgate, advanced collision avoidance, luxurious interior, massive touchscreens, 14 camera views, premium comfort. That's what the Sierra can offer, but the good folks at Richard Carr and that great customer service can tell you about all the different vehicles on their lot, and in the end, find the one that is just right for you, whether new or pre-owned. So new trucks on the lot, dozens of quality pre-owns as well. All those pre-owns go through a 172-point inspection, and they have multiple lending options, as Richard Carr loves to say yes to loans when others say no. So check out the people you can count on for 23 years in Central Texas, having built a reputation for your automotive needs. Run by proud Wacoans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
I'm going to tell you a tale of two companies founded 25 years ago. The first, Pickup Outfitters, started as a little shop on Lake Erie Drive by a local company selling the truck bumpers they were making in Waco. Then, 6 years ago, new ownership took up the cause of battling vehicle nudity, vowing to fight until there were no more naked trucks in Central Texas. And so far, they estimate they've outfitted more than 40,000 trucks at Pickup Outfitters. Now, the second company's story is not as impressive. They too started 25 years ago, but didn't have the vision of Pickup Outfitters, and to date, they have not outfitted one single naked truck in 25 years. So we'll celebrate the 25th anniversary of Pickup Outfitters with money-saving specials and valuable prizes. The second company will support them too by giving away 25 one-month subscriptions to their online service called Netflix. Save and win the Pickup Outfitters 25th anniversary celebration through Thanksgiving. Details online at createacommotion.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302. Do
you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Garrett, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina's walked off the set for a second, tracking down, if he can, Ricky Thompson for the segment we have coming up next. Hey, it was one of the college football note. Cal fired their offensive coordinator, an offensive line coach. 6 straight loss. Bill Musgrave's been around a long time. A former Oregon star, wasn't he? I believe that's right. Yeah, former Oregon and NFL quarterback, was the Super Bowl as John Elway's backup with the Broncos. He's been around a long, long time. He was fired as the offensive coordinator, 96th nationally in scoring offense. Angus McClure, also the offensive line coach, fired as they've lost 6 consecutive games.
Man, Cal football, I just eye roll. I mean, all due respect to their fans and whatnot, but I just think immediately when I think of Cal now, I think of like expansion and all the back and forth with that. But no, I mean they got to do something, because I roll mostly because it's like, yeah, it's just they're just there basically. Like one of those programs is just kind of there at the moment, and I don't know exactly what they are or what they're supposed to be or what direction they're moving. But I do feel like there's probably some changes in need, and there's a good place to start for them. So probably a good move by the Golden Bears, and yeah, we'll see what direction they go.
Sonny, both the Bay Area schools need a shot in the arm.
Badly, man.
Stanford and Cal both need a shot in the arm. And David Shaw is a really well thought of coach, but it might be time for them to think about, or him to think about going to the NFL like they've wanted to do forever. And
who's that?
The NFL apparently.
Oh, okay.
Right. People.
I don't know, man. That's kind of like a whole Eric Bieniemy thing now at this point, where it's like he should be there, but like, okay, who wants him? And so for David Shaw, like maybe his heat meter was burning a lot a couple years back, and now like I feel like I barely even hear about the guy or Stanford anymore. And Cal is just, like I said, too, they're just kind of there post Sonny Dykes, who's now gone and, obviously done really well for himself. But, yeah, they're just sort of there. And so you're right. The Bay Area schools need a bit of a shot in the arm in a major way.
Speaking of Sonny Dykes, who's the coach of the red-hot TCU Horned Frogs, who will play Saturday in the 11 o'clock slot, Fox big game. Fox Saturday will be here with all their different talent. This is what he said. He didn't even realize that TCU was an underdog. He said this. I didn't realize until about Wednesday. We don't want to be given things. That's the one thing that we've talked about all year long. Let's earn this. Nobody had any expectations for this football team at all other than ourselves. We understand that's the way it is. Our deal is, hey, bring it on. If we've got to win them all, fine. Let's try to win them all. He was talking as well about how they shut down an offense which has several type stars. Joe Gillespie, I thought he did a great job, had a sense of what Texas was trying to do, made some great calls. I mean, to hold this offense to 3 points, are you kidding? This is an offense full of future NFL players, draft picks. I thought it was a hell of a performance. When I saw that game and score, I kept waiting for some sort of a shootout to erupt. Never did. Not even with the craziness at the end of the game. Joe Gillespie was at Tulsa with Philip Montgomery, now the defensive coordinator. They were flying all over the place.
Also credit to TCU for having the fumble return for a touchdown and then not letting that crowd crush them.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you do that and you are 4 minutes away from just walking away and doing exactly what you need to do, and then that happens, and then TCU's got the ball back with like, all right, well, oopsie daisy.
Let's get 5 and 9 and 6 and 4 and 3.
Back when Baylor was ended up hiring Matt Rule, Sonny Dykes was a strong candidate, allegedly. I mean, who really knew? But he seemed like he made sense and was allegedly a candidate. And I remember at the time I wasn't in favor of that, because you got to remember, this wasn't just hiring a football coach. This was hiring like
a crisis guy. This is the middle of crisis. And so it wasn't as simple as just go get an X's and O's guys and roll out the football. I mean, you had to also kind of be able to handle the worst media firestorm you could possibly walk into. And I just felt like at the time, Sonny Dykes is a good football coach, but I don't know. I think you need somebody that can, trustfully also handle all the other crap that's going to come with this. And Matt Rule was perfect for that in the end. He was made for that in the end. And I don't know if a lot of other coaches would have been able to handle just how hard that was, off the football field. So I didn't like Dykes as a candidate back then. And then obviously they, went around once Matt Rule left to Carolina, and Dave Aranda turned out to be the hire. But for TCU to get Dykes after, he carved out a little bit more time at Cal and, got himself a bit more ready for a jump. They landed in a great spot, both he and TCU. I mean, it ended up being a perfect match made in heaven and all worked out well in the end. Sometimes things don't happen right when you want them to, but because something bigger's down the line. I feel like that's kind of Sonny Dykes and TCU. I'm sure there were other jobs that he wanted over the years or possibly looked at. Who knows? TCU might have looked around at some other candidates. Gary Patterson could have left at a different time, and this never works out. But for both of them, it's just it's like match made in heaven, man. It's all come together. And, I also think that he made great hires. I mean, obviously Garrett Riley's one of the top names now when you talk about, offensive coaches and really top-notch coordinators on the offensive side. And then Gillespie, as you mentioned, I mean, that was a brilliant hire. He looked at who was giving teams problems and giving offenses like the ones that, they were going to face and see problems. And Tulsa was one of those schools and, goes and hires Gillespie. And I remember kind of eyebrow raising when that hire was made, but not ever thinking that it would be as successful as it been as quickly as it has been. And for them as a defense to step up and put on that performance when the offense has really been the one taking the headlines, I think was awesome. And just a great all-around effort for the Frogs, and he nailed his hires. I think having Kaz as your strength guy, obviously, a lot of thumbs up around here for him and what he does in his job. So nailed it. And I mean, from every aspect, how good a year one you could have. They nailed every aspect of that under Sonny Dykes.
Well, Ricky, we
so far
aren't able to. They have. They're not able to get in touch with him. In fact. We'll do this. The kick times for the Big 12 coming up. And by the way, Baylor in Texas in Austin the day after Thanksgiving is at 11 o'clock kick as well. That's been announced from earlier today. TCU at Baylor will be at 11 o'clock on Fox. Kansas State, West Virginia will be at 1 o'clock on ESPN+. God, Kansas State comes off that fantastic win, and they're in West Virginia, and they're on ESPN+. Texas at Kansas, FS1, 2:30 Central. Tech at Iowa State, 6 o'clock on FS1, following that game between Texas and Kansas. And then ABC, it's still one hell of a rivalry. Oklahoma State at Oklahoma, despite OU at 5-5, and Oklahoma State, of course, with that nice win against Iowa State. So that's the setup on television for the Big 12 coming up this weekend. The best national bangers.
Yeah, let's get to that.
Illinois at Michigan, Illini coming off a disappointing loss to Purdue.
This ain't a banger anymore. I mean, it's one of the top games.
Well, the problem is there's not many, and that's one of the better of the not many.
But Illinois is losing steam, and so that's not as good as it looked like it might have been, couple weeks back or a month ago or something. But I mean that could be interesting. Obviously, Michigan unbeaten. That'll be interesting.
I do think Illinois' defense can maybe contain Michigan a little bit better than most.
That's fair.
But again, you're right, Craig. It's not, and especially if Chase Brown has to sit this one out, even though Brett Bielema says he's trending in the right direction, or if he's not full speed, then that takes away any chance that Illinois really has of scoring on Michigan's defense, who is insanely good.
Okay. Every single one of these alleged bangers was hurt by one of the two involved, or both. Illinois at Michigan, Illinois. TCU at Baylor. TCU's in it only because it's TCU. They're unbeaten. They're in the middle of the mix, and Baylor blew a tire against Kansas State. Georgia at Kentucky.
Probably Kentucky just lost to Vanderbilt.
Well, that's exactly.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Is it still in the top 25?
Just inside the top 25. There's always one of those. Not this week, though.
Yeah, no.
You didn't see any of the middle of the pack SEC just jump inside the top 25. Now, the college football standings tomorrow night, it might be a different story.
I mean, I kind of felt that was coming for Kentucky eventually, the way they were sort of keeping them in the polls. And I get it wasn't based off of absolutely nothing at times, but it was starting to get a little, I don't know, it started to feel a little like it was cushioning, what you were trying to justify towards the top with Kentucky. But yeah, that all got thrown out the window, and I was waiting, like, who do they try and sneak in? But like South Carolina's struggling, so you couldn't pop them in there like they did earlier in the year. Remember that? Yep. Or, I guess there weren't any other candidates to go and replace, so you could still have, well, there's 6 teams in the, or whatever. So, yeah, tough loss for Kentucky. Didn't necessarily see that one coming.
How about it's going to be a great rivalry? It always has been. It lost a little bit of luster, but it's all the pageantry. USC at UCLA, and both lost. No, USC took care of it, and UCLA lost. Another team in what would have been a possible banger, and UCLA loses in their game. And that game's coming up this weekend too.
Yeah, still should be a good one. I mean, it's a rivalry. They hate each other, and good quarterback matchup in this game either way. But UCLA certainly took some of the bloom off the rose in that one. And then Oregon losing to Washington to me isn't really that bad when it comes down to bad losses. This week, especially as close as that game was. But it sucks if you're an Oregon fan thinking that you were
and you have
on the
Utah
outside
coming
looking
into town.
Yeah. And you got Utah coming in who doesn't mess around.
Every single one of those 5 games, Craig, you're right. Illinois, Michigan, probably not. Every one of those games affected by somebody losing this past weekend.
The other problem about this week is this is also the week where a good chunk of the SEC does their like A&M at 3-7 is playing UMass, but that's when they put them on the schedule. So.
How much are the Minutemen favored by?
The Minutemen are 1-8.
Hey,
so
I mentioned what Dan Wolken wrote, but at the very top of that misery index were the Aggies after their loss to Auburn. So those are
they're
the
so
bangers.
bad that you don't even remember they're still playing.
They had
you know what I'm saying? Like you don't even think about the fact that they're even playing. At least I don't, because it's irrelevant really, unless you are stewing on, or you're planning on. Making a stew out of all of the tiers, and you're loving that there's all this negative stuff, then you got it circled. But, I mean, in terms of, where they matter in the big picture, they don't at all right now.
I'll tell you this. When you score 10 points against that Auburn team, no matter what your excuses or reasons are, if Ross Bjork goes to Jimbo Fisher in the offseason and says, Jimbo, what about shaking up the offensive staff, including letting someone else call the plays, and he bristles at that, the next thing you do is, because they're not firing him right away, is you go to your guys and say, we're starting a savings account right now. Because they have got to. He has got to change. And here's the thing about Jimbo. You've probably heard me kind of rant on him and rain on his parade a little bit. He's a really good coach if he would just adjust, if you just adapt. The thing that is a flaw in his thinking about this offense has worked through several other national championship teams when he was at LSU, when he was at Florida State. That is true, but especially when he was at LSU, everybody was running that offense. Now they're not. So they're not even running at the high school levels. So he's getting kids and having to reteach them football as opposed to just advancing the football they already know.
Paxton, Sonny Dykes beat Texas when he was at Cal.
He did?
He did, yeah. Yep, he did. Remember that.
Papa B, Baylor versus Oklahoma on ESPN Plus does not help either program or the conference. It helped ESPN Plus because they might have gotten a few more subscribers because that's where they had to go to watch the game. That's what they're doing. And that's what on occasion we go, why is that on ESPN Plus? It's all about trying to let everyone know that they exist.
Yeah, I mean, that's the TV network calling the shots there. And I'm sure for an online broadcast, having, Oklahoma as a pull because they just have a massive built-in audience, it's good for their platform, if you will, to have an Oklahoma on there. Not so great of a look for the conference, like you said, or not having one of your premier usually teams in the spotlight. That game to me, that was Baylor, Oklahoma. That to me, now was a few days, a week removed from that game. It makes sense that it wasn't on, but at the time I was like, golly, Baylor and Oklahoma's not on regular TV. that was the surprising, but yeah, just a good get there for ESPN Plus. And by the way, Auburn, I mean, I know they've gotten shouted out a lot already for their showing up on Saturday, but for a program that's, in the midst of a coaching change, supported one of their own in a major way and really showed out, with A&M coming to town. So despite the fact that they're having a bad season, they really rallied the troops, and I respect that.
Cadillac Williams,
yeah,
right? Steve Frog fan, you got to think Baylor fans would flood the stadium to see the Bears ruin the Frog season. I would if I were them. This game scares me to death. I don't know why it scares you to death. TCU has owned Baylor, really, for the most part. There's been some great wins. The Charlie Brewer 2019 double overtime or whatever it was, 2 or 3, 4 overtimes. Do you have the Darby Brown tweet?
It scares you to death because this Baylor team, can be good, but you also know they can be bad, and you don't know which one ever shows up. And so the fact that this doesn't really have any expectations, I think means that maybe good Baylor shows up, and that's what you worry about is them putting it together because they are capable of beating TCU. I absolutely believe that. I don't think this is 100% Frogs by any means. Now, they could go and win in a blowout, and that wouldn't surprise me, but I absolutely can see the folks that could see the stumble that TCU could take if they're not careful in Waco on Saturday. So, yeah, I'd be a little bit nervous about it, but I would also be mostly confident based on everything we've seen so far and based on recent history where, as you said, they have dominated this rivalry for the last several years.
I know we got a break, Paul, but Darby Brown, this is a picture she took of a fan that was at the game between Baylor and Kansas State. I'm here to interview your coaches. A Nebraska fan up in the rafters, up in the probably at the
he's
second.
He's got to go to a
level.
lot of places then.
Well, he should interview Chris Kleiman. Obviously, there was that early on about Dave Aranda. That's calmed down, and that wasn't going to happen. But it will be interesting to see if they have just 2 games left after getting smoked by Michigan. Let's see. Thank you, Darby, for that picture. When we come back, David Hellman, Fox Sports, covers the Cowboys, and you want to talk about a roller coaster? Paul and I, when the Cowboys play, we have a text. We ought to one day print it. He's negative. I'm like, Cowboys never lose.
They won after they were up 14, right? I turned it off when they were up 14.
Yeah, you should see the text I sent Jack. We can't do that one.
Oh, no, I saw that one about, yeah, that was very ugly. The Cowboys and Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and I put up over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden, fans started jumping me. Oh, it was the officials. It was the calls. It was the ref. It sounds like all other fans.
They're up by 14.
They're up 28-14. They blew it.
It was Aaron Rodgers.
With no receivers, and now all of a sudden there is one. This is 365 Sports. Which one am I doing, Paul? Brazos Oral and Facial Surgery. It's a place with Dr. Scott Warren. Man, what a great job he did with me. I decided I was going to get implants in my front right, these 2 teeth right here. One was not there. The other one might as well not have been there. And what they did with that process, I cannot tell you how smooth and easy it was. Brazos Oral and Facial Surgery. What is very delicate and a very sensitive thing to do is to have a tooth pulled and have implants put in. And the process from start to finish was flawless, was absolutely flawless. They do dental implants, of course, wisdom teeth taken out, full arch replacement, bone grafting, and their staff and Dr. Warren were just fantastic. And now, even though I don't have the greatest smile by any means, I feel much better. I'm not trying to hide that hole that I had right here off to the side of my smile and my front teeth. Dr. Warren, Brazos Oral and Facial Surgery. It is where I would suggest you go if you need any kind of major type dental work. They are the place. And so smooth, so much of, I was scared to death. And then I said, okay, I can't wait to go back for this and this and this, and now things are great. Thanks to Dr. Scott Warren and his staff. Go to BrazosOralSurgery.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. And BK Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football teams in Texas, right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, led by our leading rusher, the F-150, 45 years in a row. Lock in your best price and rate today by custom ordering your new F-150 at BK Ford. Simple, easy, trusted. Experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneerboys.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
Looking for a great job with great pay and awesome benefits? Genco FCU is hiring. As a longtime Waco employer, Genco focuses on what matters most in our employees' lives, like pay incentives, bonuses, benefits, 401k plans, paid time off, advancement opportunities, medical, prescription, dental, and vision insurance, as well as short and long-term disability. Come join our incredible team today and make Genco your career that will work for you. Apply at gencofcu.org or at any branch location.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
First and goal. He's found 5 different targets. He's going to hand it off. It's Pollard, and he's across for the Dallas touchdown.
It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
David Hellman on Mondays in that last part of this 5 o'clock hour joins us, Fox Sports California Kid and the Cowboys and Packers. And David, Paul and I have a text message back and forth throughout the game. And I just there was no way that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were going to beat this Cowboys team with all the things they've been. But what, Paul, he got engaged, focused for one game.
Yeah, look, David, it's Aaron Rodgers, okay? He's caused Cowboys fans too much trauma. I'm not letting it go. We talked about it last week, and finally he woke up and started caring again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I picked the Cowboys to win that game, so I can't sit here and say, I told you so, but, you also have to allow for that to happen. Aaron Rodgers is now 8-2 against the Cowboys as a starter. He's done it every single way imaginable. I said last week, if you're not at least a little bit uneasy, you're lying to yourself. It's been proven time and time again, Rodgers is capable of doing that. You know that the Packers have talent, even if it hasn't shown for the vast majority of the season. So, yeah, I went into that game with very uneasy vibes, and it turned out to be justified.
David, the Cowboys' run defense is really struggling right now. And Mike McCarthy even said that pass rush is a kind of a luxury until they get the run defense figured out. Now, I know a lot of talk is about OBJ, but if he was willing and healthy and able to play, wouldn't Ndamukong Suh might be a guy you'd call as well?
Yeah, sure. If he's willing and healthy and wants to play. I mean, I think we just haven't talked a lot about Ndamukong Suh because literally yesterday is the first time I heard his name. Maybe there's something going on there that I'm not aware of, but it's very obvious OBJ wants to play football. He tweets about it every other day, and people are actively following that sweepstakes. I haven't heard anything about Ndamukong Suh and where he wants to go and whether he might play, but hell yeah, if the Cowboys can get him under contract, they absolutely should. Because, struggling is putting it way too nicely. They're atrocious. They're fourth worst in the league against the run. They're giving up an average of 175 a game over the last month. That would be second worst in the league for that time span. It's really bad. And, yeah, Mike McCarthy said it. Micah Parsons said it yesterday. It's not going to matter how well they rush the passer until they give anyone a reason not to run the ball. So whether it's Ndamukong Suh, whether it's doing a better job of setting the edge, whether it's doing a better job of rallying to the ball carrier, it all needs some work because it's a disaster right now.
I was listening on the way earlier this morning to Go Workout, and I heard, and it's the 105.3 The Fan, the flagship in Dallas, and RJ and Sean. And was there complaining about CeeDee Lamb on route running? I know he had his best game of the year, first 100-yard game in a while. Is there any of that to CeeDee Lamb? Did I miss something?
I think the inconsistency's been there all year. And, yeah, you're not going to pin this loss on CeeDee Lamb after he had such a wonderful game. But, yeah, we've seen this. We saw this against the Bears, and we saw it yesterday. Not to let Dak Prescott off the hook. Like, a couple of those throws were very risky and shouldn't have been made, but it's obvious that he's not always on the same page with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb could have flattened his route out a little bit and cut in front of the safety on the second interception that happened over the middle of the field. Him and Dak have often not been as much on the same page as you would prefer. I think it's nitpicking when you're trying to figure out why the Cowboys lost this game. But I think consistency with CeeDee Lamb has been an issue throughout the season. He had a, I think you could call it a drop, a missed opportunity on a third down in the game yesterday as well. He struggled with drops times throughout the season. I think for a guy who was billed as the most exciting Cowboys draft pick of the last decade, I think it's understandable if people are a little bit disappointed that he's not more consistent, but I don't put that loss on him.
David, what did you think about some of the decisions at the end of the game? I agreed with the fourth down call because that was going to be a tough kick to make, and you're probably in the same situation because no matter how well Brett Maher's been playing, that's not putting him in a winning situation. But the play calling right before it, if you're going to go for it on fourth down, was a little suspect to me.
Yeah, I was really confused. Mike McCarthy said after the game that as early as second down, he was talking about going for it. And I was like, well, if that's your attitude, why wouldn't you run on third down? You have third and a long three. The Cowboys they played that to perfection in the first half on one of their drives. They ran the ball on third down. They got right up to the marker. They hurried to the line. They had Dak sneak it. They got the necessary yardage by half a yard. That's the type of forward-thinking stuff I think you want to see when you're going for it on fourth down. It was a long three. I think you could call it 4th and 4. And, yeah, if you know ahead of time that you're going to go for it and you're running the ball as well as the Cowboys were yesterday, I don't get why you wouldn't run it on third down. But overall, I agree with you. I like the decision to go for it. It's not an easy kick at all. Outdoors in Green Bay when it's 26 degrees from 53 yards. If you have Justin Tucker, sure, but the Cowboys don't. So I like the call. I wish they would have done something a little different on third down.
So when did they lose grip on this game? What was it? What moment was the one? Was it when Rodgers started finding the guy that couldn't catch his ball to now start to hit them deep? What was the deal?
Yeah, I would put it. I mean, I'm not looking at the box score right this second, but the second touchdown to Christian Watson felt, very early in the fourth quarter. Cowboys are obviously up 28-14. They seem like they've got a good read on everything. To give up another explosive play to Christian Watson like that, a guy who had 88 yards going into the game, when that happened, and again, the last touchdown that Green Bay had to tie the game up, they made him march for it. They made him go 10 plays, 90 yards. But they, two such cheap touchdowns to Christian Watson, the first one and the second one. When he got that, I forget that it was a fourth down as well. So, your pass rush didn't get home. You have a chance to get the Packers off the field near midfield and reestablish control of the game. Not only did they give up the fourth down, but it's just a 40-yard touchdown. And when that happened, I was like, buckle up, here we go. This is Cowboys. This is the Aaron Rodgers Cowboy Packers games that I remember watching.
Yeah, I kind of, went off on our Packers fan producer here, David, in a tweet or a text I cannot repeat, but I was mad at the whole state of Wisconsin after that game. But, looking ahead, the Cowboys, going back to the run defense, they're playing the best running backs on their schedule for the rest of the season. They've got Dalvin Cook and Saquon Barkley and Travis Etienne, like all these guys coming up who are having great seasons.
Yeah, I mean, what are you mad at the state of Wisconsin for? The Cowboys played like crap.
Yeah.
They gave up 200 rushing yards.
It's just years of trauma.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm being facetious. I get it, but like we argued about that on our show today here in LA. Like, is that a great Packers win, or is it a good a Cowboys team that should be better playing terribly? I think it's the latter. I think you get bad mistakes from Dak Prescott throwing an end zone interception on a ball on a situation where you had a chance to take a 10-point lead early. Another interception that swings the game toward Green Bay early in the second half. And then, again, 200 rushing yards. Well, I mean, it's very rare to win games allowing 200 rushing yards unless you are just dominating the takeaway game, which the Cowboys weren't. So, yeah, I mean, and that's, I don't think it's time to press panic because their run defense hasn't been phenomenal all season. And they've still managed to get to 6-3, but you just said it. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's on the schedule, Dalvin Cook's on the schedule, Saquon Barkley. The Eagles don't have one stud runner, but they run the ball better than anybody in the league. And Micah Parsons said it last night, like, this isn't going to stop until they show the league that they can do something about it. So it could be a long last 2 months of the season if they don't find a way to stop the run a little bit more consistently.
All right, who is better at disrupting an offense, Micah Parsons or Harold Perkins?
Oh man, I'm not. Look, we can't compare an 18-year-old kid to a guy that won NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Even after not having a great game yesterday, I think Micah Parsons is still on the short list for Defensive Player of the Year. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to watch Harold Perkins and think about Micah. He's unblockable. He's always around the football. He's always making plays. I mean, he beat Arkansas by himself, basically. He wasn't getting a whole lot of help from anybody else. And I tweeted it on Saturday. It warms the corners of my black heart to think that he was supposed to go to A&M and he didn't. And now he's an LSU Tiger and just makes me really happy on top of everything else that's going wrong for A&M, which also makes me very happy. They could have had Harold Perkins and they missed out. So it's just great. It's just been, I thought LSU would be pretty decent this year, but to win the West in Brian Kelly's first season in a year when all the preseason hype was about A&M and they're not even going to a bowl game, it just feels really, really good. I'm very happy about it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. David
Thanks,
Hellman, NFL and Cowboys in the Fox Sports Studios on the West Coast, does his show. It's just so I love his demeanor, sense of humor. He also is incredibly insightful.
Watch Speak on FS1 if you want to see David every day. But I do think that sports is the only realm of the world where pettiness is acceptable etiquette. In that regard. When we was talking about the whole Harold Perkins thing he just went on.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of petty, but again in sports that's acceptable etiquette.
Yeah. Harold Perkins, first Power 5 player since Ohio State's Chase Young. He's pretty good, although he hadn't been able to. He's trying to come back now with a knee injury. 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles in a game. That was 3 years ago. Like 20 years ago, but that's the kind of player he was. Insanely good in that game. Caused what looked like a fumble earlier, and they rolled in it. You could see where the ball was being pushed forward in the hand, and then came back and did it again. Was just fantastic. TCU led Texas 3-0 at halftime. The two teams combined for 140 yards in the first half, the fewest in any half in a Big 12 game since Colorado, Texas back in 2009. 39 of those yards came in the first quarter, the fewest combined total yards in a first quarter in an FBS game this season. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace on their Instagram page and Twitter account. It will be up soon about what their specials are for this week. Last week they had a lot on, of course, the plate for you, but also no matter what will be specials for this week, they have specials for what is coming up, which, of course, is holiday time. Turkeys, Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays, maybe business meetings or at the office. Half spiral hams, $4.15 a pound. Bone-in hams, $3.40 a pound. Those are for 18 to 22-pound ham. That's a big ham. Raw turkeys, whole raw turkeys, 14 to 16 pounds for $2.85 a pound. You can go to Waco Custom Marketplace, Lake Air Drive, and pick one up or call in an order, and they allow you to have 4 per customer, 4 of whichever one of these you want, maybe even 3 or 4 different items per customer. Whole smoked turkeys, 9 to 12 pounds for $4.80 a pound, and mini pit ham, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. Give them a call. Go online, WacoCustomMarketplace.com for more information and see the specials as well. Lake Air Drive, a great place for tailgating for the last home game for Baylor, Saturday against TCU. You can get what you want for an early tailgate, which will be because of 11 o'clock kick. Kolaches, they have a bakery, a butcher shop, and more. Charcoal, pellet fuel, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This month, Allen Samuelson Waco is having the Black Friday sales event. You can save big on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab with total values up to $4,250 with 2.9% for 72 months. That's right, plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders and no payments until January 2023. Shop an award-winning dealership with award-winning product. Allen Samuelson Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks.
Come by, let's be friends.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 hot topics from the college football weekend. Number 5. How messy can the Pac-12 get now? Now, if USC wins, and I suppose Oregon wins again, then everything will be kind of fine going out. But this could get, if you lose here, you're gonna have a lot of teams with the same record going against each other in that, or vying for that Pac-12 championship game in the last week. So it could get really interesting and messy after Oregon lost and UCLA lost this weekend. That's gotten pretty interesting.
I tell you what, that conference has stepped up with all the turmoil off the field because of USC and UCLA.
The Pac-12 and Big 12 are far more alike than anybody wants to admit on either side of this raging Twitter debate. But they're both kind of similar this year in that, from the top, there's a good chunk.
The Pac-12 has 4 teams that are in much more of the discussion. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying about how competitive the league is week in and week out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a good competitive league week in and week out.
Yeah, we'll see this weekend, Utah, Oregon. That's an elimination game, so that'll separate somebody there. Obviously, USC and UCLA couldn't have really shaped it up any better as far as having meaningful games down the stretch in a tight conference race like this. So, yeah, it's been a wild, fun year in the Pac. That Washington win, obviously, threw things on its side. So great win for the Huskies there, and tough, that all this is basically, I guess USC, slight chance they could still find their way in, but outside of that, basically it's like the Big 12 in that unless TCU or USC is able to find themselves in, and TCU as an unbeaten would have a much better shot, then you all kind of beat up on each other and eliminated your chances, but it's made for a fun, season of unpredictable football.
Yeah. Number 4. Who's going to win the Big Ten West? I mean, it ultimately probably doesn't matter who's going to play Ohio State or Michigan. But right now, as crappy as their season offense could be, Iowa's to lose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Iowa.
There's 4 teams all at 4-3, but Iowa has the best shot probably right now. So Iowa, as bad as it's been,
God, that's
could win their side of the conference.
I mean, the offense sucks, but they've been putting up some points lately. But what people fail to typically say when making fun of the offense is how incredible the rest of the team is.
Yeah.
I mean, how incredible their defense is. The fact that most teams, if they had an offense like Iowa's, would not have a win to their name, probably. But Iowa is sitting here and probably going to make the Big Ten championship game, despite how atrocious that offense has been for a majority of the year. So, yeah, I mean, well done. I don't know. Like, on the one hand, I don't really want to compliment Kirk Ferentz because I do think he's done a bit of a disservice to his team with how bad the offense is. But at the same time, you can't deny the results and can't deny their ability to find other ways to win, even if they make it far more difficult on themselves by not having, a group that's a bit more capable on the other side of that terrific defense. But yeah, I think it's going to be Iowa, and it's ugly football, but hey, it gets the job done.
They have been able to get some things together because of everybody else in their division. They've taken advantage of the fact their division is atrocious.
Well, they've also won 3 in a row.
No,
so, I mean, yeah. Illinois is falling off, and that certainly plays into it. And so, yeah, you need some help around you to get back into it. And they've gone on a win streak. Illinois slowed down. And then the rest of it, what was it, like Minnesota early in the year, people thought was, going to have a chance.
And they've won 3 in a row, too.
They won 3 in a row, but they had their thing in the middle there. Obviously, Nebraska was never a factor. Northwestern never a factor. So, yeah.
Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa are 3 of the top 5 scoring defensive teams. Is it because they're that good on defense or because of the conference and the style they play? And I know Ohio State changes a lot of that.
I do think, though, that I think it's the style they play. I really do. I mean, because I think most of the time now people will score even average level scoring, and Minnesota's 4th, right? So so don't leave them out of this.
Michigan first, Minnesota and Iowa 4th and 5th.
And Minnesota hosting Iowa this weekend. So
for the Florida Rosedale. Number 3. This is for Garrett, and maybe Garrett alone because we just talked about it, but the college football world is really going to have to deal with Harold Perkins Jr. for 2 more years.
They are. I don't think they're ready. I do not think they're ready, man. This kid is unbelievable. Even if he wasn't an LSU player, I mean, you can't knock or deny the talent that he has and his just way to change and take over a game. I'm excited that he came to LSU, and I'm just excited to see his growth because he's going to be a star, man.
His instincts on sacks and stripping the ball for a freshman are really crazy.
That goes back to what I was saying with the Honey Badger. If you go back and watch the Tyrann Mathieu film from when he was a freshman, he was like that same way, finding the ball, creating the turnovers, and you see a lot of similarities in Harold.
Yeah.
I bet he feels great about flipping when he did.
Yeah.
Could have been. I mean, obviously A&M would probably be a lot better with him, but, it's not really like defense has been their major issue. But shoot, I mean, he might have won him a couple extra games on his own. I mean, he's winning them for LSU, right? So, yeah, that was a terrific flip late for the Tigers.
Yeah. Number 2. Who can sneak into the CFP? And these are teams that are outside of it. Can LSU do it? They're going to need a lot of help because of that second loss. Can USC and Tennessee, to me, and Clemson, I guess, would be the only teams who could reasonably do it. But I do think the committee thinks so lowly of Clemson that a lot of crazy stuff would have to happen for them to get in, including beating North Carolina sizably, which even if they do beat North Carolina is good enough right now where I don't think that's how that game is going to go down when it happens. So I don't know. So is there really only 2 teams that can win out and sneak in, which would be not going in and right now and then finding their way in. But I think it's just USC because I don't think Tennessee is sneaking in. They'll wind up there because of losses around them because the committee would love to see them back in it.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, I guess in theory could, but yeah, they're not going to play in the SEC title game, so it'd be kind of hard to justify them there, but they could certainly find ways to if they wanted to. But yeah, I think USC, LSU would have to win out, but I don't know. Be interesting to see how they're kind of viewed. But yeah, just a couple of teams really have that opportunity.
Yeah, so now it's even whittling down even that much more. And number 1, I think
Clemson you mentioned, sorry.
Clemson. And number 1, I think now, and the committee needs to know this, TCU can win however they need to. I mean, that was not their typical game on Saturday, and they still won. And the whole, they've been behind in all that game control stuff. TCU proved you can win a game that you don't score a lot of points in. You can win a game. They won that game on defense, really. And that is what national championship caliber teams do is when the game is presented that you have to win it this way, they adjust and they win it that way.
Yeah, they've done all that they can do, except they still have to win
out
3 more games.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I do think that game proved a lot to a lot of people this weekend. This is not like, oh, they've got to be in a shootout and then just wear people down. No, they can grind you into dust too.
Yeah, they can do whatever they need to at the end of the game to get whatever they need to get a victory. They are very resilient. Very much not a team that rides the waves too much to just kind of stay steady Eddie. Whereas, I think like a Baylor, for example, gets too high, gets too low, gets too high, gets too low. I think TCU just kind of stays in that middle ground and, never loses their cool. And I think that's a testament to the head coach and just kind of the message throughout the staff that's being sent. They got a good culture, obviously, there right now. And I would love to know Gary Patterson's thoughts. I'm sure he would say, and I'm sure he would mean to some extent, he's happy for the school and the players that he recruited and all that, but I know there's got to be another side of him that's just burning up at the thought that they just beat the team you're now with, and they're 10-0, and yes, they have this golden opportunity right in front of them. But I do think these last 3 games are, I think Baylor this weekend, you got to be on alert. You can't just let your guard down now. Iowa State, the same thing. Even if you feel like, oh, well, there's no way you can't outscore them. Well, they'll drag you down and make it a 14-10 game before you know it. And so they're going to have to be really careful there. And then, you know what, looking like maybe a K-State rematch, and that would be juicy here in 3 weeks if that's what it turns into. That's where it looks like it's headed right now. But, yeah, TCU's been impressive. They have.
Who had a better weekend in the Big 12 coaching? Was it Kansas State's Joe Klanderman, their defensive coordinator, or was it TCU's defensive coordinator who was the best defensive coach in that stadium at DKR?
I was just going to say Chris Kleiman was awfully happy in his post-game interview. That game meant a lot to them, and that was something they'd been building towards for a couple of years. Even talked about how they mimic some of the stuff that Baylor does. Yep. So I know that he's feeling like a coach of the weekend after that one. But I don't know. I think both those efforts were great. Probably I just default to Gillespie because they're unbeaten. They went into Austin and won, and they shut down, an offense that's got a lot of future NFL guys, and they did it without having anybody really given any thought that they would be able to do that and thinking that the offense would win them a game if they were able to win it. So I'd go Gillespie there.
Question from Paxton, then we got to say goodnight. Thank you, Paul. Garrett, Paul, Craig, whoever else is here. It's dark in this place. Paxton, is that a TV in the background behind us, or is that a screen? Can that show games on the TV?
Yeah, we've watched TVs on the
Okay, all right. Yeah, so the answer, Paxton, I had to let you know. I'll let the young guys know all that technology.
I could have just answered that on the chat room.
Jonathan RWREHE, I'm a TCU fan. Big 12 should cancel the title game to ensure a playoff team. They got to win twice more, but it has cost teams before, and it should have cost a couple of others in those Big 12 championship outcomes, but it did not. For Garrett, Jack, Emery, also for Jacob, Levi out there somewhere scheming. I was 1-6 on my college picks. For Craig and Paul, Sports Tonight 10:30 on the CW channel. We'll have that for you. We're back again tomorrow at 3. I'm David Smoak with them. Everybody a part of it, including you, our audience. Thank you. Good night.